My brother got the legendary dragon I earned, but my hidden quill could rewrite my father's F-rank runt. I was Rowan, the king's bastard son by a palace maid. The queen died after the scandal, and he blamed us. My brother copied that hatred, though I beat him in every class. My grades earned me first dragon selection. My father erased my right and gave my brother the legendary dragon. He grinned and said, "Your grades won't matter because you won't even reach me." I reached for Lyra, the smallest, muddiest dragon there. A black quill panel flickered behind my eye. Rewrite attributes, draw upgrades, and earn materials through revision quests. The quill showed Lyra as a horned woman with black gold wings. Then, a massive dragon towered over the arena. Championship registration closed in 4 days. My father scoffed at the championship. "That thing can't bring us honor, so give up." I smiled and said, "No, I think I'll win." I turned away with my mother. "Boy," the king called, "want a wager?" "He wins, we leave forever, and I surrender my royal blood." My mother whispered, "We can still beg." "I accept, so what do I get when I beat him?" He offered full authority under binding magic, plus public humiliation terms. I laughed and said, "Deal." He shouted, 4 days, and don't run when fear finds you." My mother stayed quiet until the palace corridor swallowed the courtenay behind us. Then she grabbed my sleeve with both hands. "Rowan, tell me you weren't bluffing in there." Lyra stood beside my boots with her muddy little wings tucked tightly against her body. Her scales looked dull under the corridor lamps. My mother looked from her to me and swallowed. She said, "I can beg him." Netto. She tightened her grip and said, "I have begged for worse things. That's exactly why you're not doing it again." Her eyes went wet, but her voice stayed controlled. "If you're wrong, we lose our room, my wages, your name, and every guard who has to pretend we belong here." I rested a hand over hers. "Don't worry, I have a plan." She stared at me like that was nowhere near enough. "It isn't a good plan yet." That almost made her laugh. Back in the hall, something had flickered behind my eye. A black quill panel nobody else could see. It had shown me Lyra's body like an open page. Every weak thing on her was a line I could rewrite. Scales, fire, wings, anything. I told my mother the truth in one sentence. The runt they laughed at can be rewritten, and I'm holding the pen. If Lyra wins, the wager frees us for good. The panel had already listed the first thing it needed. Scale binder, the kind the repair yards throw out every day. I had seen barrels of it in the lower market. So that was where my plan started. I kept going before fear could fill the space again. "But our lives are going to get better." She searched my face. "I am sure I will win." Her grip slowly loosened. I left her at the servants' stair where the lower market road began. When I looked back, she was still watching me disappear into the crowd. A woman with small black horns was floating beside a stone wall when I reached the lower market. I stopped so fast, Lyra bumped into my ankle. The woman looked around my age, maybe a little older, and wore a dark robe trimmed with gold script. Nobody in the market reacted to her. A fruit seller walked directly through the edge of her sleeve without noticing. I stared at her. "Who are you?" She smiled. "Ikinili." I looked behind me, but there was nobody waiting for an answer. The thought escaped before I could stop it. Who is this baddie and why is she talking to me? Her smile vanished. "You know I can hear that, right?" I froze. She pointed at my forehead. "Telepathic link. That doesn't make this less weird. It makes it much more efficient." She drifted backward through the stone wall. I stood there for 2 seconds. Then her head came back through the same wall. "Do you require a second demonstration?" "No." She stepped through the wall like it was fog. "My name is Sayara." Lyra looked directly at her. Syra crouched in front of the tiny dragon. "At least one of you has manners." I lowered my voice. "Nobody else can see you. Or hear me." "Why can't I?" Syra's eyes moved to the black panel flickering behind mine. "Because you were given sovereign quill." I asked the question that mattered. "What exactly did I get?" Syra's expression changed from amused to professional. "Did nobody explain the power you were given?" "No. That tracks with your family." The quill opened without me calling it. Lyra's body appeared as a black outline covered in red marks. Brittle scales, weak ember, unstable flight, narrow mana channels, low natural growth. I stared at the list. "That's worse than I thought." Lyra made an offended chirp. "I meant the list." Sarah folded her arms. "The quill can change those things." I focused on the first line. Then I write dragon steel scales. The panel flashed black. Revision rejected by available resources. A recipe spilled across the panel long enough to make my stomach drop. It wanted metals from 3 royal vaults, a mature dragon core, and enough refined ink to buy a house. Syra smirked. "The quill doesn't stop you from being ambitious. It just sends me the bill." "Now you understand." I narrowed the wording. "Reinforce every scale." Still impossible. "Reinforce the damaged scales on Lyra's chest." The recipe shrank. I tried again. "Reinforce 1 damaged outer scale." This time the panel changed. "Conditionally possible. Required carrier binder. Required pressure resin. Required catalyst for permanent revision." I looked at Sarah. "That last part is the problem. That last part is the story." A second panel opened. "Ravishun quest available." Syra tapped the glowing edge even though her finger passed through it. "Big changes need proof." "Proof from what?" "Usually something that can kill you." A stable hand with copper-brown hair caught me staring at empty air near the repair stalls. He carried a crate of broken buckles against his chest. Prince Rowan. I knew him from the lower stables. Goma. He glanced at the empty wall beside me. "Were you arguing with the wall?" Lyra leaned toward him even though he couldn't see her. He is lying. Toma looked at the ink bottle on my belt. Right, the bottle lost then. I ignored that. I need discarded scale binder. He stared at Lyra. For her? For one scale. He laughed once. Then he saw I was serious. Toma led me through the repair yard to a bin marked for furnace disposal. He pulled out a half-dried jar of beast hide binder and a packet of pressure resin. The licensed workshop throws this away because it stains pale scales. Lyra was already mud brown. Perfect. Toma gave me the jar for nothing and watched like he expected a joke at the end. I mixed the binder with 1 drop of my remaining contract ink. The quill accepted the carrier. I placed my palm over 1 cracked scale on Lyra's chest. A thin black line formed beneath my fingertip. I wrote 1 word into the scale. Reinforced. The scale darkened from muddy brown to deep charcoal at the edges. Lyra shivered once. Then the quill stopped. Temporary preparation only. Permanent revision requires boss-proof and compatible catalyst. Toma squinted. That's it? For now. He picked up a small repair hammer. You want to know if it did anything? I nodded. He tapped an untouched scale first, and a hairline crack appeared. Lyra hissed at him. Go. Sorry. Toma moved to the revised scale and struck it harder. The hammer bounced. The repair crew behind him stopped working. Toma looked at the hammer. Then he looked at the 1 dark scale on Lyra's chest. His grin disappeared. Do that to the rest of her. Well, I can't. The quill opened again, and a quest seal burned onto the black page. Lyra checked it with me. Full-scale revision requires a living scale heart catalyst from a boss-class drake beneath the palace service district. Toma saw my face change. That look usually means I should stop helping you. I picked up the discarded binder and closed the jar. It means I need a tunnel map. The registration bell was already moving toward us, and every delay now belonged to Father. The quill opened the tunnel map before Toma finished unfolding his paper one. A black route burned under the palace service district. Revishuan quest accepted. Reach the collapsed heat line. Defeat the boss-class drake guarding the old pressure chamber. Preserve the scale heart. Toma handed me a packet of cooling salt anyway. The lower crews use this when the vent lines burst. The quill marked it as preparation material. It wouldn't level Lyra, but it would keep her alive long enough to earn the thing that could. Lyra floated beside the tunnel gate. One more problem. There is always one more problem. This run eats the only clean recovery window before readiness. I tightened the strap around the servant ink kit. Then we don't get hurt. Lyra gave me a flat look. The service tunnels were hot enough to make the walls sweat. Toma led us beneath the royal training grounds through maintenance corridors nobles never saw. Workers dragged cracked pipes through ankle-deep runoff. Nobody bowed when I passed, and most of them just looked tired. That was fine with me. At the first junction, the stone shook. A pulse of golden mana rolled through the ceiling hard enough to snuff 3 lamps. Lyra crouched. Sarah looked up. Solar crown. Another pulse hit. The old pressure gauges along the wall jumped into the red. Toma swore under his breath. Leon is doing the showcase today. A worker came running from the lower line with blood on his sleeve. Support 3 collapsed. The man behind him shouted over the alarm bell. 6 people are trapped past the rail chamber. Royal handlers pushed through the junction from the opposite side. Their white armor was polished enough to reflect the emergency lamps. Leon came behind them with solar crown at his shoulder. Its wings were folded tight to avoid the low ceiling. Leon saw me and almost smiled. Of course you are down here. Another handler grabbed his arm. Your Highness, the lower mana line is feeding back into Solar Crown's ceremonial harness. Leon looked toward the trapped worker route. Then he looked at the gold fittings wrapped around his dragon's chest. Get the harness above ground. The injured worker stared at him. My crew is still down there. Leon's handler shook his head. The royal dragon takes priority during a surge. I stepped past them. Toma, show me support 3. The injured worker looked from the retreating handlers to me. Toma pointed toward the lower route. They chose the harness, so we follow Rowan. The workers left the white armor behind and came with us. Leon called after me. I didn't turn around. You already took the useful dragon away. The lower rail chamber had folded in on itself. A cargo track hung from the ceiling like a broken spine. 3 workers were pinned behind a tilted support frame. The other 3 were trapped farther down where something heavy moved in the dark. Toma stopped at the edge of the chamber. You hear it? The quill opened over my vision. Quest Uprezul activated. The rune changed. Weak rail anchor. Lose counterweight. Cooling line under pressure. Boss movement behind the eastern support. Scale heart located beneath the left chest plate. Critical condition. Don't rupture the marked organ. I pointed toward the workers. Cut the rear brace first. One of them shouted back. That drops the rail. Exactly. The tunnel drake hit the rail chamber before we freed the last man. It was nearly 3 times Lyra's size. Its scales were thick, rust-colored, and scarred from years underground. Its head smashed through the broken support frame without slowing down. Lyra stepped in front of me. She looked absurdly small. The drake charged anyway. Left. Lyra jumped aside. Its shoulder tore through the loose rail anchor. The counterweight dropped. Half the hanging track crashed between the drake and the workers. The drake climbed over the rail. The quill marked the scale heart again. One bad hit through the left chest would destroy everything we came for. That meant the obvious attack was banned. Lyra's weak ember wouldn't penetrate the front plates anyway. The boss lunged. Lyra met its jaw with the single reinforced scale on her chest. The impact threw her across the chamber. She hit stone hard enough to roll twice. I felt the bond yank against my ribs. She stood before I reached her. One charcoal scale was still intact. Everything around it was shaking. Sarah shouted from beside the wall. The rail above its right side. I saw it. A bent support held 3 lengths of track over the boss. The drake charged again, and I ran directly at it. Toma yelled my name. I threw the cooling salt into the burst pipe beside its face. Steam exploded white across the chamber, and the drake snapped at the cloud. I slid under the broken rail and kicked the release pin free. The support dropped. 2 rails slammed across the boss's back, and the third pinned its right foreleg. Its left chest stayed untouched. Lyra, shoulder. She hit the same leg joint with everything she had. The pinned limb buckled. The drake twisted and exposed the underside of its neck. I grabbed the repair hook with both hands and drove it into the softer seam below its jaw. The boss ripped upward, and the hook nearly tore my shoulder out. Lyra latched onto its neck and refused to let go. For one awful second, both of us were being dragged toward the collapsed heat shaft. The bond filled with her pain. Mine answered right back. I wrapped the hook chain around the fallen rail. Lyra bit down harder, and the drake pulled once more. The rail didn't move. Its own weight snapped the neck seam against the hook. The boss dropped. The chamber went silent except for the steam. Toma came running with the stretcher crew behind him. I was already on my knees beside Lyra. Her breathing sounded wrong. She had 2 fresh cracks along her ribs. The quill opened over the dead boss. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 2. Compatible catalyst preserved. The marked scale heart glowed beneath the undamaged left chest plate. I cut around it instead of through it, and the organ came free whole. Dark red lines pulsed across its surface. Sarah nodded once. Now you can make the revision permanent. I mixed the last of the servant ink with the scale heart residue. I kept the wording narrow. Reinforce Lyra's outer scales and supporting shoulders within current anatomy. The cost dropped into range. I placed my hand against her back. Black script moved beneath muddy scales, and one plate after another darkened and layered over the next. Her shoulders thickened slightly, and her chest deepened enough to support the new weight. She didn't become beautiful. She didn't become huge. She looked like the same tiny dragon after surviving something that should have killed her. Toma reached us with the stretcher. Lyra pushed herself upright. He stopped. The medics stopped behind him. Toma slowly lowered the stretcher. Right. He looked at the dead boss. Then at Lyra. We might need a bigger one next time. Lyra took one proud step. Her new scales pulled her sideways, and she stumbled into my leg. Syra covered her mouth to hide a laugh. The quill printed the new problem without mercy. Mass increased. Mobility balance worsened. We didn't get to leave the tunnels. A second mana surge hit before the medics finished wrapping my shoulder. The pressure wave ran down the old pipes toward the worker district. Captain Bram met us at the district gate with half his guard pulling civilians from housing blocks. Main vent is failing. Behind him, royal handlers were loading Solar Crown's ceremonial harness onto a reinforced carriage. Leon stood beside them. I pointed toward the nearest line of homes. There are still people inside. The harness contains championship focusing gems. Captain Bram's jaw tightened. I didn't waste time arguing. Toma, take the left line. I put Lyra at the center intersection where the mana wave would hit first. Her new scales could take pressure, her old body couldn't. They couldn't stop the surge, so we used the streets. I had workers open drainage gates and knock loose 2 empty water tanks. The next pulse hit the tanks first and split around the intersection. Lyra anchored the center long enough for the last families to cross. Her claws carved lines through the stone. Captain Bram watched the whole thing. Then he climbed onto the evacuation cart. Everyone follows Rowan's route. A royal handler objected. Bram pointed at the retreating ceremonial carriage. The royal party withdrew with equipment while he stayed with my district. That ended the argument. By the time the surge died, Lyra could barely keep her eyes open. My shoulder had swollen under the bandage. The clean recovery window before readiness was gone. Toma brought me the tunnel drake's remaining organs in a sealed tray. One piece had a mark burned into it, but it wasn't natural scar tissue. Thin lines formed a control glyph around the dead nerve cluster. Syra's expression lost all humor. That was manufactured. Syra stared at the control glyph until Toma stopped pretending he wasn't listening to my side of the conversation. I wrapped the organ back in cloth before more workers gathered. What does it do? Sarah shook her head. I can tell you it is manufactured. That isn't an answer. It is the answer you can prove. That mattered. The quill could analyze problems, but it didn't hand me a history book every time something strange appeared. I carried the marked organ to Cora instead, and she met us in a temporary inspection room beside the worker district. Her eyes went first to my bandaged shoulder, then to Lyra's darker layered scales, then to the glyph. Cora didn't touch it. Where did this come from? The tunnel boss. Before or after you killed it? The before. Syra floated behind her and muttered that Cora asked useful questions for someone so suspicious. I ignored her. Cora lifted a recording crystal over the tissue, and the glyph reflected as a clean black ring. Her expression barely changed. This isn't a natural mana scar. I looked at the empty space beside her. Someone difficult. Cora wrote nothing about Syra and recorded the glyph instead. Until I know what it is, this remains an anomaly attached to your file. Does that help me? It helps the truth survive whoever tells the story later. That was good enough. The first control clue entered an official record under Cora's seal. The worker district had already started telling its own version, and by noon, Captain Bram had 3 signed statements from the tunnel crew. I found him outside a repair yard with papers stuffed under both arms. You are building a lawsuit. I am building credit. He shoved the papers at me. The first was a district testimony seal, and the second was access to repair yard stock at worker price. The third was a route pass through maintenance roads normally closed during championship week. I looked at him. Why? Toma looked offended. That isn't a financial system. It is down here. Captain Bram walked up behind him. The district owes you. I don't want people giving me what they can't afford. Bram handed me a stamped token. Then use what costs us nothing. The token carried his district seal. Testimony, route access, and my name when a clerk asks why you are somewhere inconvenient. Workers standing nearby started adding their own marks to Toma's list. A furnace porter offered scrap resin, and a stable washer offered cracked mixing bowls. A cart mechanic offered 2 hours of workshop space after dark. I had spent my life inside a palace that treated resources like proof of birth. The people under it treated resources like favors that could move. The quill opened over the pile. Multiple preparation routes available. None of them raised Lyra's dragon level. All of them made the next attempt less stupid. I accepted the network. Not charity. Access. The Royal Dragon office answered before sunset, and Vyrek arrived at the registered reagent aisle with 4 clerks and a silver authority badge. He was tall, neat, and dressed like a man who had never carried his own equipment, and every vendor straightened when he approached. Toma leaned toward me. That is bad. Vyrek stopped at the stall where I was pricing mana resin. Imigasu. He said my name without title, and I looked at his badge. Varek. His smile didn't reach his eyes. The office has reviewed the worker district reports. That was fast. Rapid unregistered dragon alterations tend to move quickly. Lyra growled from beside my boots, and Vyrek looked down at her new scales. Plink, plink. He turned so the vendors could hear him. Until her modifications are reviewed, registered reagents sold for further alteration may expose the seller to liability. The mana resin vendor pulled his hands away from the counter, and the shop beside him closed its display case. Toma swore quietly, but I kept my voice even. Are you banning sales to me? Vyrek smiled again. No. Then say what you are doing. I am informing licensed sellers of risk. Which was a ban that wanted cleaner shoes. I pointed at the office seal on his chest. Put that warning in writing. His smile tightened. You think records protect you from everything? No. I glanced toward Cora's inspection building. I think they make people admit what they did. Vyrek left without giving me a written order, but the vendors still refused me. By the end of the aisle, I had lost every registered stabilizer, licensed pressure resin, and royal workshop that could safely process boss material. Father had moved from humiliation to money. Sayra drifted beside me. He expects you to fight the embargo. I can't win that before readiness. So, what do you do? Toma answered for me. We buy worse things. I looked at him. He grinned. Finally, a royal strategy I understand. Master Keld ran the largest repair yard in the lower district. He had iron gray hair, burned hands, and absolutely no interest in royal drama. Toma placed Brahm's token on his bench, and Keld looked at it. Then he looked at me. Keld said, I repair harnesses. I need binder. He pointed his file toward the street and said, licensed binder is 3 streets up. They won't sell to me. Keld returned to the buckle and said, then take that personal problem somewhere else. Toma pushed a sack of discarded stock onto the bench. We need 10 minutes. Keld looked ready to throw both of us out. Then Lyra tried to climb onto the low platform and nearly tipped sideways under the added scale weight. His eyes narrowed, and he saw the problem immediately. Your reinforcement is too dense for her frame. No. Then why are you buying pressure resin? Because the next legal qualifier rewards a channel stabilizer. That got his attention. I opened the sack, and most of the contents were useless. Old hide glue, cracked seal wax, powdered shell from a beast too weak to matter. The quill marked each one as I touched it. Low affinity, poor carrier, wrong pressure response. Then I found a gray jar Keld had marked for disposal. High flex tendon binder, low prestige, excellent compatibility with current scale load. I looked at Keld. What was this used for? Pack drakes. Toma laughed. The prince needs mule glue. I need glue that works. Keld folded his arms. Premium dragon binder has higher mana density. It also hardens faster. I mixed a small test strip using the tendon binder and the worker resin. Keld mixed another using a spoonful of licensed stock from his private repair supply. We painted both onto cracked practice scales, and he put them under a pressure clamp. The premium strip held first, then it turned rigid. The scale split beside the repair. My ugly gray binder stretched with the scale instead, and the clamp reached the same pressure without a new crack. Keld stopped turning the handle and stared at my test strip. Toma leaned over the bench. Still personally disappointed? Keld ignored him and looked at me instead. What ratio did you use? I gave it to him. He repeated the mix himself, and the second test did the same thing. Keld pulled the disposal jar away from the scrap pile. Don't tell the licensed guild I am asking this. I am listening. Where did you get the pressure resin? Toma smiled before I could answer. Worker district. Keld grunted. Of course it was. He pushed 2 jars toward me. Take 'em. I can't pay licensed price. They were trash 10 minutes ago. He looked at the broken premium test scale. Now I would like to know why. The quill marked the salvage binder as a valid preparation route. Father had closed the expensive door, but the cheap one fit Lyra better. A readiness notice flared above the repair yard before we finished packing, and all Royal Championship candidates were ordered to appear for verification. Lyra still stumbled when she turned too quickly, and my shoulders still burned when I lifted the ink case. The readiness office tried to bury my test under paperwork, but Toma noticed before I did. He had been watching the clerk move my application from one stack to another for 10 minutes. That is the third time. The clerk didn't look up. Royal candidates are processed by priority. I looked at the nearly empty board behind him. My name is already on it. Pending verification. Toma put Captain Bram's district seal on the desk, and the clerk finally looked up. That doesn't control championship scheduling. No, Toma said, but the district filed Rowan as an emergency responder during the same window your office says he missed. Cora stepped into the room behind us, and the clerk went pale. She checked the district seal once, then she checked the time mark on my application. His slot was filed before the cutoff. The clerk opened his mouth, but Cora pointed at the board. Stamp it. Leon was waiting near the far wall with Solar Crown behind him, and he had clearly come to watch me miss the slot. The stamp hit the board hard enough to echo, and my name lit under Leon's. His smile faded. Cora turned to me. You have the test. That is all I needed. You may regret saying that. The training field sat beside the readiness course. Toma set 3 low hurdles in a curve. Lyra cleared the first. She clipped the second with one rear foot and landed crooked after the third. The quill traced red stress lines over her shoulders. Syra hovered above the field. You can't edit weight out of existence. You know. She watched Lyra try the turn again. Because you looked like you were about to try. Across the fence, Leon ran Solar Crown through a public practice circuit. The legendary dragon launched from the ground like it had been born for applause. It climbed over the first tower marker, rolled through the turn, and landed without slipping once. Students along the rail cheered. Leon looked directly at me before giving his next command. It went like on. Solar Crown repeated the course faster. Toma muttered, he is practicing at you. He can waste his energy however he wants. Leon heard me. You should watch closely. He walked to the fence. This is what a dragon looks like when it is built correctly. Lyra growled. I crouched beside her. He isn't wrong about the problem. Leon blinked. That wasn't the answer he wanted. My quill opened over Lyra's body. Scale load high, turn authority poor, mana channel strained, breath pressure unstable under current chest restriction. The readiness test would expose both weaknesses, and I couldn't fix them before the bell. So I trained the one thing I could. I ran beside her. Every time the new scales pulled her offline, I used the bond to brace the turn and keep her from rolling. The first attempt tore pain through my bad shoulder, but the second hurt less because I moved before the pull peaked. The quill didn't call it a skill yet, but simply recorded the repeated load between us. Blinked pressure pattern developing. Leon watched from across the fence, and his confidence came back. You are teaching yourself to fall with her. Better than teaching everyone else to carry my dragon. Solar Crown's ears twitched. Leon's face hardened. The readiness board changed before the final practice run, and a second path appeared beneath the standard test. Candidates who failed minimum flight or breath could continue through one extra qualifier. Pressure Guardian. Reward listed. Manu Latis Stabilizer. I stopped reading. Syra didn't. That is the one. Toma looked between us. The one what? The legal stabilizer Lyra needs. The quill confirmed it, and the material could widen and protect channels already strengthened by boss-proof. Cora noticed me studying the reward. You only see that route if you fail the standard. She studied my face for another second, then she walked away. Sarah folded her arms. She likes you more when you don't sound clever. No one likes me more when I sound clever. That may be the first thing your brother taught you correctly. The readiness course filled before my turn, and father arrived late and sat above the field beside Leon. Solar Crown rested behind them like a gold statue, while Lyra looked very small at the starting line. The first requirement was simple. Take off, clear the tower marker, complete the turn inside the boundary, land under control. The second requirement came immediately after. Create a steady breath strong enough to hold the target flame for the minimum interval. I knew exactly where Lyra was weak, but knowing didn't make her ready. Cora raised her hand. Begin. Lyra ran. Her first 3 steps were clean, and her wings opened. She climbed higher than she had in training. For 1 second, hope made me stupid. Then the added scale mass pulled her outside wing down. Doles. She tried to correct, but the turn tightened too late. Her tail swung wide, and one wing clipped the boundary pole. The whole field heard the crack of wood. Lyra spun out of the marked turn and hit the grass shoulder first, and I was moving before she stopped sliding. She stood on her own. That mattered to me, but it didn't matter to the test. Cora looked at the boundary marker. Flight turn failed. Leon laughed once from the gallery. Father didn't laugh. He looked satisfied. That was worse. Lyra still had to attempt the breath minimum, and I wanted to pull her from the course. The quill showed no broken bones, and her new scales had done their job. She looked at the breath target and stepped forward. I understood the choice. Your call. She inhaled. The ember built under her chest. The target flame flickered when her breath hit it. For 1 heartbeat, it held. Then her narrowed channels spasmed under the pressure. The flame collapsed. Smoke came out instead, and Lyra coughed and lowered her head. Cora's voice carried across the field. Breath minimum failed. The public board changed beside us. Flight failed, breath failed, seed penalty applied, direct qualification route lost, extra qualifier required. The worst route would cost time we didn't have. The crowd didn't need Leon to tell them what it meant. I heard whispers move through the rail. The F rank finally showed. The scales were a trick. He made it heavier and ruined it. Leon came down from the gallery while the board was still updating. That is the problem with fixing trash. He looked at Lyra's darkened scales. You just make heavier trash. My hand closed before I could stop it. Then Lyra pressed her head against my leg. I let the fist open. Leon wanted me arguing with him, but the board already said what happened. I looked at Cora. We failed. She nodded once. Is she, huh? No review. No review. Then give me the extra qualifier. Leon's smile changed. He had expected excuses. Father stood at the edge of the gallery. You still have time to stop embarrassing yourself. I looked down at Lyra, and she was tired, bruised, and furious. So was I. We aren't stopping. Cora moved my name onto the pressure guardian route. The Manhwa stabilizer appeared beneath it as the only listed reward. I had lost the clean seed. I had lost the direct route. I had lost more time. The next thing waiting for us was built to crush dragons that already passed this test. The pressure guardian arena was built like a stone bowl standing on its side, and candidates entered at the bottom. The guardian increased force until the dragon yielded, lost consciousness, or crossed the required threshold. Cora met us at the gate with the Manhwa stabilizer sealed inside a glass case behind her. I could see it through the quill. Compatible channel support, required after valid boss proof. A stone construct hung above the arena on 4 chains, and its body was shaped like a dragon's skull wrapped around a pressure core. Syra checked the quest margin beside me. Special condition. I see it. Withdrawal before threshold voids the proof. External shielding voids the proof. Linked tamer entry permitted. I checked that line twice, and Cora noticed. You don't need to enter with her. I know. The pressure applies through the bond if you do. I know. My shoulder throbbed under the wrap from the tunnel fight. Toma stood outside the barrier with a fresh support brace in his hands. Can I vote against this? Then I vote against it anyway. Lyra walked through the gate before I did and didn't look back. I followed. The first pressure wave hit like deep water. Lyra's new scales held. Her legs didn't. She dropped to one knee, and I felt the force through the bond and nearly joined her. The quill opened over both of us. Outer armor stable, mana channels compressed, breath capacity falling. The Guardian had found the same weakness, the readiness test exposed. Cora's voice came through the arena speaker. Rowan, you can withdraw before injury. Leon answered from the gallery before I could. He should. Father sat beside him again, and he had come to watch the extra qualifier finish what the first test started. Lyra pushed herself back up, and the Guardian increased pressure. A red line crossed the quill. Channel collapse approaching. I moved closer to her. Sarah appeared beside the barrier where only I could see her. You trained the load pattern. I understood. The quill named the pattern at the exact moment I needed it. Linked braze available. Share directional load through active bond position. Cost transferred to tamer body. I put one hand against Lyra's shoulder. Don't carry all of it. Her eye found mine. I will take the left side. The next pressure wave hit, and I pulled through the bond instead of pushing against it. Half the load shifted through my bad shoulder, and pain went white down my arm. Lyra's chest expanded again. She stayed standing. Toma shouted from outside the barrier. What did you just do? I couldn't spare breath to answer, and the Guardian raised the pressure again. The arena markers climbed past the minimum qualifier line, and that should have ended it. The quill didn't clear the quest. Boss proved incomplete. Required threshold above the previous record. I looked at the old academy record carved into the arena wall, and Cora saw where I was looking. Leon stood up. Cora ignored him. Rowan, you passed the extra qualifier. The Guardian was still active because I hadn't signaled completion. I looked at Lyra, and her front legs shook. My left arm had gone numb below the shoulder. We could take the pass and leave, and the stabilizer would be ours as a qualifier reward. But the quill was telling me the next dragon level required proof beyond the safe result. I leaned in until my forehead touched hers. One more. She gave a low sound from her chest. Not fear. Agreement. I raised 2 fingers toward Cora. Continue. Cora looked furious. Your shoulder is already compromised. Then stop it if I fall unconscious. That isn't reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. She lowered her hand, and the Guardian climbed past the academy record. Pressure crushed the air out of my lungs, and Lyra's scales groaned against each other. The dark plates held while the force pushed deeper into the channels under them. The quill filled my vision with red warnings. Blinked braze overload, tamer joint failure imminent, dragon channel collapse imminent. I shifted my feet wider, and Lyra matched me. The Guardian pressed harder. My shoulder gave first. I felt something rip inside the joint, and my left hand stopped answering. The bond tried to dump the lost load back into Lyra, but I stepped closer instead. I hooked my working arm under the base of her neck. Stay up. Her claws cracked the arena stone, and the old maximum line lit beneath us. Then the next marker lit. One step beyond it. The gallery went silent. Leon stopped smiling. The Guardian held the pressure for another heartbeat. Lyra didn't kneel. The core above us shut off, and every chain around it dropped slack at once. I hit the ground. Lyra remained standing over me. The quill appeared before Cora's medics reached the gate. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 3. Manhwa stabilizer approved. Channel expansion revision available. I laughed once because breathing hurt too much for anything longer. Toma got through the barrier with the medics. Don't laugh. That sounded like an order. It is. Cora entered behind him carrying the sealed stabilizer and looked at the pressure marker. Then at Lyra. Then at me on the floor. No candidate has remained upright past that line. Leon's voice came from the gallery. He still failed the actual readiness test. Cora turned slowly. That is correct. Leon relaxed too early, but Cora raised her recording crystal. And this is also correct. The arena board changed. New Academy pressure record. The words appeared directly beneath Lyra's name. Father stood from his seat, and his face had lost the satisfaction from the flight failure. Cora handed the stabilizer to Toma, rather than my useless left hand. Use this only after her channels settle enough to accept it. Sarah nodded. Listen to her. Cora did one more thing before anyone carried me out. She walked to the public readiness board. The king's attendants were already gathering around the failed flight and failed breath lines, and Cora placed her examiner seal beneath them. The board refreshed. Flight turn failed. Breath minimum failed. Extra qualifier completed. Academy pressure record exceeded. Boss proof recognized under legal test conditions. The entire gallery had to see all of it together. Leon stared at the board, and Father said nothing. I could accept that. My arm hung useless against my side, and Lyra was still bruised from the first test. We still had the worst seed and a slower route. The record didn't erase the failure, but it made sure the failure couldn't erase us either. Captain Bram found us before the medics finished arguing about my shoulder. He carried a route board under one arm and looked annoyed to be indoors. The cliff convoy leaves at first light. Toma looked at my arm hanging in its brace. He can't lift a cup. I have another hand. That isn't the defense you think it is. Bram set the route board on the table. That route was normally punishment, but today it was carrying medicine to 3 mountain villages before the championship roads closed. A royal escort name was already written on the assignment line, but Bram crossed it out. He wrote mine instead. Toma blinked. You can do that? The district can request the responder it trusts. Bram stamped the board with his seal. The workers vouched for him. A royal clerk near the door cleared his throat. Prince Leon's escort unit was assigned first. Bram looked at him. Then Prince Leon's unit can carry ceremonial boxes. The clerk left before Bram could give him a second job. I looked at the convoy manifest, and the road cut across 3 exposed switchbacks where aerial predators nested. The quill opened over the route. Compatible structural catalyst detected. Boss class aerial target likely. Preservation condition required. Sarah appeared beside the board. There is your next step. Of course it is on a cliff. Your dragon currently turns like furniture. Lyra growled at her. Syra smiled. I said currently. Before we left, the quill finally cleared the muddiest stabilizer for use, as Lyra's channels had settled enough after the pressure gardeon. Toma held the glass vial while I worked one-handed. I mixed the stabilizer into a thin black carrier line and wrote only what the proof had earned. Widen and reinforce active mana channels within current anatomy. The script sank beneath Lyra's layered scales, and her chest expanded slightly with the next breath. Fine dark lines spread between the plates around her shoulders. She just breathed without the tight whistle that had followed the readiness failure. The quill closed the revision, and no free recovery followed. My shoulder remained useless. The medicine convoy stretched across the cliff road in 6 wagons, and Bram rode the front cart. I stayed beside the last 2 because the quill kept marking the ravine side as the likely attack line. The drivers noticed Lyra limping after every sharp turn, and one of them pointed at her wings. That is our air defense? Bram answered before I could. That is the dragon that held the worker district while the royal escort left. Nobody laughed after that. At the second switchback, the quill flashed. Reeve's Hun quest opened. Defeat the boss class scale predator. Preserve the primary wing route intact. Protect the medicine load. Failure condition updated. If the route is torn, burned, or crushed, structural reward is lost. I spoke the condition aloud to Bram, and he stared at me. Rowan, you want us to survive an aerial boss while you protect part of its wing? Yes. That is an irritatingly specific problem. Syra nodded beside him even though he couldn't see her. I like him. The boss attacked from above the cloud line. Its first dive hit the third wagon hard enough to lift one wheel off the road. The creature was a long-bodied cliff wyvern with pale gray scales and wings wider than the road. Air pressure rolled off every beat. Lyra tried to meet it in the air and got 3 body lengths up before the wyvern banked around her. It moved like the turn had happened before she decided to follow. The quill marked the boss's left wing route in gold. Intact structural pattern. Don't destroy. I marked everything else red in my head. Forget the route for now. Bram looked at me. The quest says the route matters. The medicine matters first. The wyvern came down again, and I ordered the wagons tight against the inner cliff. Drivers chained the wheel hubs together so one impact couldn't throw a single cart into the ravine. Lyra planted herself beside the rear wagon, and the wyvern slammed into her from above. Her darker scales held, but the force still drove her flat. I felt the hit through the bond, and my injured shoulder lit with pain even inside the brace. Lyra pushed back up, and her widened channels let her draw a deeper ember than before. She fired at the road in front of the wyvern instead of its body, and hot air burst upward. The predator's next dive lifted early, and it missed the wagon by inches. The easiest solution would have been to burn the wing joint when it passed, but that was exactly the part I needed intact. So we changed the battlefield instead. Bram had the drivers unload 2 spare climbing cables, and I ran one across the road at shoulder height. The other went through an old anchor post on the cliff wall. The wyvern saw the first lime, and it climbed over it. That was what I wanted. Lyra waited below the second. The predator folded its wings for the dive. Its protected wing root disappeared against its body, but the outer wingtip stayed exposed. Now, Lyra jumped and caught the trailing membrane near the tip with her teeth, and the wyvern screamed and climbed. Lyra went with it. The cable looped around the outer wing, far from the root. Bram's men threw their weight onto the anchor line. The boss banked toward the ravine. The old post cracked, and the whole line ripped free. Lyra vanished over the edge with the wyvern. I grabbed the remaining rope with my good hand, and my boots left the road. Bram caught my belt before I followed them. For 1 second, all three of us hung against the ravine wall. Lyra's claws scraped uselessly over stone, and the wyvern beat its free wing and tried to climb. Its trapped outer wing twisted against the rope, but the gold-marked root was still intact. I couldn't pull them up with one arm, so I stopped trying. Lyra, let it climb. Bram shouted, "What?" The wyvern dragged Lyra upward, another body length, and that gave her the height she needed. She released the wingtip and kicked off the cliff wall. Her whole body slammed into the predator's ribs from below. The boss lost the air under its free wing, and it hit the road sideways instead of falling into the ravine. Bram's crew dropped the rope and scattered. The wyvern tried to rise, but Lyra landed on its neck. Her ember hit the softer throat plates at point-blank range. The boss went still. I reached them with my shoulders screaming inside the brace, and the quill opened over the body. Medicine load preserved. Primary wing root intact. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 4. Drawing range expanded. Compatible structural material approved. I still had to learn how to draw something her body could actually use. Bram knelt beside the preserved wing joint. "You nearly went over the cliff for that." Lyra bumped her head against my knee. She nearly went over the cliff for the medicine. The final wagon driver climbed down from his seat, and his hands were still shaking. Bram turned so every crew could hear him. "Put this in the route report." He pointed at Lyra. "Last wagon remained on the road because she took the hit." The drivers nodded, and nobody was asking if she counted as air defense anymore. Toma was going to love the preserved wing root, and Syra was already studying it like a teacher about to ruin my evening. The material is good. That sounded like bad news. It is useless if you draw the anatomy wrong. I looked at Lyra's current wings, then at the massive structure we had just preserved. The quill opened a blank drawing margin, and for the first time, it was wide enough to let me try something dangerous. Every moment on the cliff road was time the failed seed had taken for Mira. Toma loved the preserved wing root for exactly 12 seconds, then he watched me draw. His smile disappeared. We had moved the convoy into a roadside camp beneath the cliff watchtower. Bram gave us one repair tent before taking the medicine wagons toward the city. I laid the wyvern wing root across 2 crates beside Lyra, and Syra floated over my shoulder while I opened the quill. A black drawing margin spread across my vision, and Lyra's current wing skeleton appeared in thin gold lines. The boss structure appeared beside it, and I copied the larger outline anyway. The quill accepted the material, and the preserved membrane dissolved into black gold ink. New bone lines formed along Lyra's shoulders, and her wings unfolded wider than they ever had before. Toma actually laughed. "Okay, that part looks incredible." Lyra stared at the new wings like she had just been handed a second body. She beat them once, and dust blasted across the whole tent. Toma grabbed the center pole before it came down. "Maybe test outside." We took her to the empty supply road behind the camp, and I told her to lift. Lyra crouched. Her new wings struck the air, and she shot 10 feet upward. For one perfect second, I thought I had solved it. Then her left shoulder folded inward. Lyra twisted in the air and hit the dirt on her side. I felt the impact through our bond, and my injured shoulder answered with a hot pulse. Toma reached her first and pressed 2 fingers beneath the new joint. "Don't make her fly again." "I know." "No, you knew after she crashed." That one landed. The quill painted red stress lines through both new wings. Joint angle incompatible. Tendon path overloaded. Lift increased. Control reduced. Sarah folded her arms. "You enlarged the picture." I noticed. "You didn't understand the picture." I noticed that too. Lyra lifted her head and gave me a look that somehow managed to be insulting without words. I deserve that. Toma sat back on his heels. "That is the most dangerous kind of magic I have ever heard of." The quill opened a new layer over Lyra's body. Unatumi overlay available. Instead of showing me what to draw, it showed me why the drawing had failed. Gold lines traced every tendon from Lyra's shoulders to her wingtips. Red pressure marks appeared where the copied boss geometry forced weight into joints built for a smaller frame. I looked back at the preserved wing root, and the boss hadn't simply owned bigger wings. Its shoulder blade sat farther back, and its chest was deeper. Its first wing joint carried weight at a different angle. The membrane itself tightened along 3 distinct load paths, and I had copied the result without copying the structure that made it possible. Toma stared at me. "Rowan, who are you arguing with?" "Myself." "Yourself has a very annoying voice." I ignored both of them. The official flight task was scheduled before sunset, and missing it meant keeping the worst route Leon's side had pushed onto me. Attempting it with these wings meant hurting Lyra again. I opened the quill over the boss joint. Then we rebuild. Toma brought every rope, brace, hinge, and leather strap he could steal legally from the repair stores, and he insisted that last word mattered. We built a wooden wing rig beside the tent. I measured both structures until the numbers stopped looking like measurements and started looking like relationships. Shoulder depth controlled the first angle, and the first angle controlled how the outer wing loaded. Tail position changed how much correction the wings needed during a turn. Toma tightened one strap around the practice frame. He tightened the lower strap and said, "Bad weight is bad weight." He pulled the frame sideways, and the whole rig twisted. Then he moved one brace 6 inches lower and pulled again. The load spread across the frame instead of breaking one joint. The quill highlighted the movement. Unatumi overlay updated. I redrew Lyra's shoulder first, and the quill consumed the last of the clean stabilizer. Her wing base shifted slightly backward, and I deepened the supporting chest line without increasing her overall size. Then I redrew the first joint, and the red stress marks faded. I adjusted the membrane last, and this time I used 3 tension paths instead of 1 broadsheet. The new wings opened. They were still larger, but they also looked like they belonged to Lyra. Toma walked around her twice. No flying yet. Lyra snapped her teeth at him. That means she agrees. Bram returned before the official test and carried the convoy report under one arm. You asked me to witness the correction. I asked because your signature matters. That is a less flattering way to say it. He looked at Lyra's wings, then he looked at the dirt scar from her first crash. What changed? I stopped trying to make the wings bigger. Bram waited. I started making the whole system carry them. That answer got his attention. The official course used 3 marker towers over the lower cliff road. Lyra only needed to lift, clear the first tower, turn through the second, and land inside the third ring. Lyra crouched at the launch line. My shoulder still hurt inside the brace, but I kept my hand away from the quill. This test belonged to the drawing we had already made. Thickly required. Lyra lifted cleanly and cleared the first tower without losing height. Her larger wings caught the cliff current, and she accelerated toward the second marker. The quill showed 1 yellow stress line at the left shoulder. Not red, not failure. Load. Tail first. Lyra shifted her tail before banking, and her body rolled into the turn. The new wing geometry followed instead of fighting her, and she cut around the second tower. Bram stepped closer to the rail, and Tama forgot to breathe. Lyra passed directly over the convoy wagon Bram had ordered beneath the turn, and the drivers looked up from the road. Nobody moved out of the way. That mattered. Bram signed the correction sheet while Lyra was still in the air. I would put medicine under that turn again. The route clerk heard him, and so did the convoy crew. The signature turned a private correction into something the officials had to count. Lyra landed inside the final ring. She stumbled once, then she stayed upright. I exhaled. The flight task board updated beside the course. Failure record retained. Corrected flight task passed. Route penalty reduced. Lost time not restored. Leon stood near the board with 2 royal attendants, and his expression tightened when Cora arrived behind him. One attendant reached toward the board controls, but Cora caught his wrist before he touched anything. Don't edit an active result. Leon looked at her. The first failure still stands. Lass. Cora pointed at the next line. So does the correction. She ordered the clerk to print my improved route before anyone could appeal it. The new assignment was still harder than Leon's, but it was simply no longer designed to bury me. I should have felt relieved. Then another notice appeared beneath it. Royal Dragon Office hearing requested. Director Varric, Strategic Property Review. Cora checked it before I did, and her face gave me nothing. The hearing can consume your remaining appeal window. Toma cursed without using a word the TTS would hate. I signed Bram's corrected flight sheet. Then I looked at the hearing notice waiting on the course rail. Fixing my own bad drawing had burned the cushion I thought the first boss had bought us. Varric opened the hearing by trying to turn Lyra into paperwork. The Royal Dragon office chamber was colder than the cliff road, and Cora stood at the center record crystal. Varric stood opposite me in a black coat trimmed with royal silver, and Lyra stayed at my side with her corrected wings folded tight. Varric didn't look at me first. He looked at her. Every royal dragon assigned through the crown remains a strategic asset. I put Bram's signed flight sheet on the table. She was called worthless yesterday. Her legal status changed when you altered her. I tapped the F rank on her original contract. Your interest changed. Cora's eyes moved between us, and Varric kept his voice smooth. A private citizen can't manufacture an unregistered royal weapon and expect no review. I am still a royal candidate. Poor day. There it was. The registration office could still shut before this hearing finished, and Varric had found a cleaner weapon than another bad route. He could keep me in a room. Cora touched the recording crystal. Director Varric has submitted a strategic property claim. Varric inclined his head. I request immediate custody during review. Cora said it before I could. You have no basis to deny it. I have no basis to approve. She turned the crystal toward him. Rapid revision is evidence of an anomaly. Her finger moved to the next blank field. It isn't evidence of crown ownership. Varric's jaw tightened, and Cora entered a new order. Recorded verification required before custody review. Movement restriction stayed active until the test ended. Varric smiled again. Then verify him. Cora looked at me. The false signal labyrinth is available now. Cora continued. The zone is designed to expose false targeting and unstable perception. Varric added the part he wanted me to hear. If the dragon can't distinguish real threats from projections, the office will classify your revisions as unsafe. I looked at Lyra, and she looked back. Record everything. Cora nodded. That was already the plan. The labyrinth gate shut behind us with Varric watching through the observer glass. Cora and 6 examiners stood in the control room above the course. Biera and I entered a circular stone passage filled with silver fog, and the first creature appeared before we reached the second turn. A 6-legged shadow with a crystal eye charged from the left wall, and Lyra struck it with her tail. It shattered into mist. A second one came from behind. Then a third. The quill tried to mark them, but every target returned a valid reading. That was the problem. Decoys can fool attribute sight. Syra floated through one of the false beasts. Congratulations on discovering why this test exists. Lyra burned another projection, and 2 more appeared. The observers above began moving kill markers across the course, and a red order flashed on the wall. Cull all hostile signatures. I stopped Lyra, and she snapped her head toward me. Wait. The nearest false beast charged, and we let it pass through the edge of Lyra's wing. No pressure moved through the bond. No air shifted around its feet. The quill showed 5 identical targets, and my eyes showed 5 creatures. My body felt one room. Not the pictures. I watched the floor, and one set of claws left dust marks. The real boss had been hiding inside the projections, and it was a pale basilisk pressed flat against the far wall. Its inner eye pulsed behind a layer of mirrored scales. The quill marked that eye in gold. Perception crystal compatible. Preserve intact. The call order flashed again. Korra's voice came through the chamber speaker. Rowan, the observers see 7 hostiles. They are wrong. Vyrek cut into the channel. You are refusing a safety order during a safety review. I am stopping you from destroying the proof. The basilisk moved, and every projection moved with it. Lyra launched toward the nearest false body. Whoa! She dropped under it instead, and the real claws cut down from above. They raked across her reinforced scales, and the armor held for half a second. Then one plate split near her shoulder. Pain flashed through the bond, and Lyra hit the floor hard. The quill lit the boss threshold. Pressure above current safe limit. Special condition active. Inner eye must remain intact. Vyrek ordered the kill again, but Korra cancelled his command. Observers follow Rowan's real target call. I stopped trying to identify which image looked real, but tracked which image changed the room. Dust moved under one body, and fog split around one tail. One reflection blocked the torch behind it. Right wall. Lyra attacked empty space to everyone watching, but her claws hit the basilisk's real shoulder. The creature screamed, and its projections flickered. She drove it away from the inner eye side, but the basilisk whipped its tail through her legs. Lyra went down again, and my shoulder brace tightened as linked brace took part of the shock. The boss opened its jaw, and I saw the throat plate spread. Amber. Lyra fired into the floor beneath its head, and the heat made the silver fog rise. Every projection climbed with the fog except one. The real body remained heavy. Now. Lyra struck the jaw hinge, and the basilisk crashed sideways. She pinned its neck without touching the eye. The quill flashed black and gold. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 5. Perception crystal preserved. Revision capacity expanded. The boss dissolved into gray residue around the intact inner eye, and I took the crystal before the labyrinth could reset. Korra's voice came through first. Real target confirmed. Update the verification method. Korra had just ordered the institution to trust my call over its own markers. The site revision took almost all my remaining clean ink. I wrote the new perception property across the crystal pattern instead of Lyra's eyes directly. The quill folded the script into her existing channels, and pale black gold lines appeared around her irises. The world changed through our bond. False signatures now carried edges, and control lines appeared as faint writing beneath ordinary magic. The quill opened multi-line scan, and several signals could now be compared at once instead of one after another. Korra ordered a final verification walk before releasing us. We had crossed 3 rooms when Lyra stopped. Nothing had attacked, and no alarm was active. She stared at a silver support pillar near the observer platform, and a black line ran through it in her new sight. I followed the line with the quill, and the support rune had been reversed. The next test pulse would have overloaded the pillar directly beneath 2 examiners. Stop the cycle. An examiner frowned through the glass. The test is clear. Stop it anyway. Vyrek stepped toward the control panel, but Korra blocked him. Lyra touched the pillar with one claw, and the hidden script flared. The examiners backed away, and Korra killed the test pulse. The pillar cracked 1 second later without anyone standing beside it. The official record updated. Concealed verification fault detected by candidate Dragon. Examiner detection failed. Legal anomaly status confirmed. Vyrek checked the line twice, but his face didn't change. Korra enlarged the hidden script on the wall display, and I knew the shape. It matched the glyph we had seen beneath the first service tunnel. Someone had written the same control language into 2 places that shouldn't share a system. Who made it? Korra shook her head. I can't identify the author. Vyrek immediately reached for custody again, which is precisely why the dragon should be contained. Korra ignored him and opened the championship reward. One prize flashed at the top of a vertical timed course. Quick wind catalyst. Korra pointed to it. Thigh Negel. Syra's expression went flat, and I understood why when Korra continued. It is the only legal route left that can return you to registration before the office closes. Sky Negel looked less like a race and more like a tower trying to kill birds. The course climbed through a narrow canyon behind the academy, and stone gates hung between cliff faces at different heights. The first half measured ascent speed, and the second half ended in a turn around a suspended iron needle above open air. Korra met us at the launch platform. Vyrek arrived 2 minutes later, and Leon arrived shortly after him. Nobody wanted to miss the part where desperation made me stupid. The prize crystal floated over the finish arch. Quick wind catalyst. The quill identified it before the clerk finished reading the rules. Acceleration trait. Compatible with current wing channels. Turn authority not included. Syra checked the last line over my shoulder. That sentence is important. Lito. I didn't answer. Leon leaned against the rail beside Solar Crown, and his dragon looked perfect against the canyon gusts. Try not to redraw the mountain when you miss. I looked at Lyra, and her corrected wings flexed once. The script light around her eyes was still faint. She was tired. So was I. That didn't change the route. Korra raised the start seal. Timed qualification. She looked directly at me. Finish before the gate closes, or the credit is worthless. The seal dropped. The era launched. The first gates rewarded everything we had just built, and Lyra climbed through the canyon without folding at the shoulder. Her tail corrected small drifts before they became turns, and the quill traced speed, load, and wing pressure around her body. We reached the middle marker ahead of the course standard. Then the canyon narrowed. Air pressure slammed sideways between 2 rock faces, and Lyra lost half a body length. Lyra climbed through the next gate on raw work, and her wounded shoulder shook under the repeated load. I felt it through linked brays. The iron needle appeared above the final ledge, and she banked around it cleanly. Not fast. Snugget. We crossed the finish arch with the qualification seal still active, and the board chimed. Sky Negel cleared. Quick wind catalyst awarded. The crystal dropped into my hand. Leon pushed away from the rail. That was almost respectable. Cora looked at the time board. You have one additional speed trial available for route credit. I knew what she meant. One better result could move us past the worst storm assignment before registration. The quick wind catalyst pulsed in my palm, and the quill showed an immediate compatible line. Raw acceleration increase available. No additional structural material required. No new anatomy required. Just speed. Sarah moved in front of me. The quill already warned you what is missing. I am not changing the wings. You are changing what they have to survive. Cora heard only my side of the argument. Rowan. I looked at the registration clock over the canyon exit, and we had already lost the cushion to my bad drawing in Varek's hearing. A perfect correction tomorrow was useless if the office closed today. Apply it. Lyra looked at me, and I put my hand against her neck. Short burst only. She leaned into my palm, and the quill consumed the catalyst. Black gold light ran into the flight channels along her chest and wings. Quick wind integrated. Revive Shun Locht increased. Warning, turn authority below acceleration output. I checked the warning, then I entered the speed trial anyway. The straightaway was ridiculous. The Lyra left the platform so fast the launch banners snapped backward. The first gate vanished beneath us, and the second arrived before I finished breathing. The quill drew one long gold line through the canyon, and every wing beat added more speed. Officials along the course started shouting times to one another. Leon stopped smiling, and Solar Crown raised its head. Lyra hit the final straight marker with the fastest split on the board, then the time crystal flashed. Course record broken. For 1 second, the entire canyon platform erupted, and officials leaned over the rail. One clerk checked the crystal twice, and Leon's faction stopped laughing completely. I felt the rush hit me almost as hard as the airflow. We had done it. Then Cora's voice came through the course speaker. Turn marker ahead. The iron needle waited over open air, and Lyra tried to bank. Nothing happened fast enough, and her body moved before her wings could redirect the force. The quill filled my vision with red vectors. Speed exceeded turn authority. Outer wing load critical. Break. Lyra flared both wings, but Quickwind kept carrying her forward. The first wing caught the turn, but the second lagged half a second behind. That was enough. Lyra rolled sideways, and her left wing clipped the iron needle. The sound reached me through the bond before I heard it in the canyon. Something tore. Lyra spun out of the course, and I grabbed the rail and pushed through linked brays. Pain ripped across my injured shoulder, and the bond slowed her panic. It didn't change physics. She hit the lower safety net hard, and the net dropped almost to the rocks before catching. Nobody cheered anymore. I reached her while the officials were still lowering the platform, and Lyra's left wing hung wrong. Not broken cleanly. Strained through the new joint and torn along one membrane path. The quill marked the damage. Quickwind remained active. Flight balance compromised. Recovery time required. Route penalty applied. Storm route assigned. Hours lost. Public record retained. Leon reached the medical rail behind Cora, and his voice was quieter than usual. So that is your miracle. I didn't answer him, and Cora looked from Lyra's wing to me. You saw the warning before the second run. Varek spoke from behind her. Then this isn't an accident. Here. That was the worst part. Sarah crouched beside Lyra. She didn't make a joke. Lyra's eye stayed on me. I am sorry. The quill opened the relationships I should have checked before the run. Speed, turn authority, wing load, tail correction, body weight. Every line pulled on another. A new calculation layer appeared. Balloons equation available. Bigger number didn't mean better dragon. It meant more force for the rest of the dragon to survive. Cora ordered the full result printed. Leon looked at the board. The quill is dangerous. I looked at Lyra instead. He is right about one thing. Cora waited. I made it dangerous. The storm route notice opened under the medical report. Storm bridge rescue. Civilians trapped. Qualification credit available. Boss signature detected. The quill marked one target inside the storm. Storm coil balance node. Compatible correction catalyst. The healers told me Lyra needed rest, but the rescue bell answered for us. Storm breach connected the Academy Ridge to the worker district across a deep ravine. A black storm had trapped 3 public carriages on the span, and one support cable had already snapped. The registration office sat on the far side. Cora looked at Lyra's damaged wing. You are restricted from standard flight. Good thing this isn't standard flight. That wasn't permission. Bram came running up the bridge stairs before she finished. He had been escorting the last medicine convoy through the district. The first carriage is sliding. That made the argument irrelevant, and Lyra limped toward the storm gate. I followed. Cora grabbed my good arm. If you use Quickwind again, I stop you myself. So will I. The quill already showed me why, and Balin's equation spread every flight variable across my vision. Speed pulled against turn authority, and wing load pulled against body angle. Tail position redistributed both. The correction wasn't more power. It was choosing where power went. I spent our last stabilizer bracing Lyra's damaged wing channel. Sarah looked at the bridge. This qualifies as a terrible medical decision. Add it to the list. We entered the storm. The first carriage hung sideways against a broken guide rail, and 6 civilians were still inside. Air pressure shoved the vehicle toward the ravine every few seconds. Bram had 3 bridge workers on the rear line. They could stop the carriage from falling, but they couldn't pull it back while the storm kept changing direction. Lyra couldn't overpower the airflow with one damaged wing. so I stopped treating the airflow like an enemy. The quill drew pressure vectors around the bridge cables, and every gust had a route. Every cable had a load direction. The carriage only needed one safe turn back onto the stone track. Bram, release the rear line when I say. He stared at me. That line is why they are alive. And it is holding the carriage at the wrong angle. The storm hit again. The rear line stretched, and the carriage tilted farther. Bram looked at Lyra, then at the Cliff Road report still tied to his belt. You fixed her turn once. I need you to trust the correction now. He raised one hand to his crew. On Rowan's call. That was the moment the rescue stopped being my theory. People were inside the carriage, and Bram was putting them on it. Lyra climbed onto the upper support beam instead of taking open air, and waited above the carriage. The next gust came from the left, and Balloon's equays hun showed the entire bridge lean with it. The release. Bram's crew dropped the line. The carriage swung, and Lyra jumped at the same moment. She used one quick wind pulse forward instead of accelerating through the turn, and her tail snapped right. The damaged left wing stayed half-folded, while the healthy wing caught the rotating carriage roof. She pushed with the turn instead of against it, and the carriage rolled back onto the track. All 6 civilians screamed, then they realized they were upright. Bram didn't celebrate but pointed at the second carriage. Do it again. The second rescue exposed the flaw in my new calculation, and the storm changed faster than I could redraw each vector. By the time I solved one gust, the next one had moved. A green line opened through the quill. Vector sketching available. I stopped calculating still pictures and drew the movement itself. Airflow paths wrapped around Lyra like flowing ink, and the bridge stopped looking like random weather. It became a set of routes. She crossed from beam to beam using the calm spaces between them, and the second carriage reached safety without leaving the track. Then the storm screamed, and something huge coiled around the far tower. The storm coil serpent had been creating the pressure shifts, and its body wrapped 3 times around the support mast. Every movement changed the airflow across the span. The quill marked a bright node beneath the scales near its lower spine. Storm Balin's nod. Preserve intact. The serpent struck at Lyra. She didn't race it, but turned around the bite. Quick wind gave her burst speed, and Balon's equays hun decided how much she could actually use. The serpent whipped its tail across the bridge, and Lyra dropped below the rail. Her claws caught the underside cable, and she swung with the force. The boss followed. That was what I needed. Bring it around. Lyra climbed the cable on the opposite side, and the storm coil chased her through its own airflow path. Vector sketching showed the next pressure loop before the serpent finished making it, and Lyra cut inside the loop. The boss overcorrected, and its spine bent against the tower cable. The marked balance node became exposed, and Lyra hit the scales around it instead of the node itself. Her reinforced shoulder took the counterstrike, and one dark plate cracked. She stayed on the tower. The serpent tried to coil tighter, and that shifted the bridge airflow again. Lyra used the new turn instead of fighting it, and drove the boss headfirst into the stone mast. The storm coil went limp. The quill opened over the body. Boss-proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 6. Storm Balloon's nod preserved. Flight system capacity expanded. I used the node immediately on the correction we had already earned, and Lyra's tail surfaces widened slightly. The wing base gained new control lines instead of more size. Quick wind stayed powerful, but now the rest of her body had a way to survive it. The final trapped carriage crossed behind us, and rescue officials counted everyone twice. 0 civilians lost. New Stormbridge rescue record. Cora arrived at the far gate with a registry clerk carrying the championship book, and the registration bell started ringing over the district. The clerk looked at Lyra's damaged wing. Candidate is under flight restriction. Cora held out the rescue report. Candidate also just satisfied emergency qualification under recorded conditions. Varric appeared behind the clerk with 2 office guards. The restriction should suspend entry. Cora turned one page. The rule suspends unrestricted flight. She pointed at the qualification line. It doesn't erase a completed rescue record. The bell rang again, and Cora stamped my name into the book. The registry seal flashed gold. Championship entry accepted. Wing restriction remains active. The clerk closed the book, and Father's raw deadline was over. Mother wasn't being thrown out because I missed registration, and I had won exactly enough time to earn a different problem. Varric placed a new document on top of the closed registry. Royal Custody Hearing. The Royal Custody Hearing offered me everything I needed, and that was how I knew the price would be ugly. Varric placed 3 sealed cases on the hearing table. The first held premium wing medicine, and the second held refined ink stabilizers. The third held enough high-grade binder to replace everything I had burned since the first boss. Mother sat behind me in the witness seats, and I could feel her looking at Lyra's damaged wing. Varric said, temporary strategic custody until the championship concludes. The quill could stabilize the structure, but it couldn't create tissue out of nothing. Varric knew exactly what he was offering. I asked, define custody. He answered, a Royal Dragon office handler controls training, feeding, medical decisions, and deployment. Even me? You remain the registered tamer, Varric said. Syra floated beside the medicine case. He means owner without saying owner. I didn't need the translation. Varric continued. Your dragon receives immediate treatment and unrestricted access to royal materials. Mother's fingers tightened around the edge of her chair, and that was the real pressure. Every hour Lyra stayed injured made the next quest worse. Every material I refused made the championship harder. Varric had built a cage out of useful things. Cora entered from the side chamber carrying a small silver device. The office requested a handler compatibility test. Cora placed the device in the center of the floor, and a blank seal sat inside the crystal ring. The quill reacted at once. Concord and seal detected, unclaimed. Activation requires voluntary bond choice. I looked at Cora, and she met my eyes for half a second. She had planted the test in a form Vyrek couldn't control completely. Vyrek saw me reading the device. You disagree? Nettle. Mother leaned forward. Smock it. I turned to her. If Lyra wants the handler, I won't stop her. Varek almost smiled, and he thought that meant the medicine had won. It meant something else. I wasn't going to speak for Lyra. The royal handler entered without armor, and he was older than Leon and younger than Vyrek. He carried no weapon, and that made him harder to dismiss. He knelt several feet from Lyra. I won't touch you without permission. Lyra watched him, and the handler placed a bowl of concentrated healing solution on the floor. The smell reached her immediately, and her damaged wing twitched. The quill showed no poison, no hidden binding script. The offer was genuinely good. That mattered. If the handler had been cruel, Lyra's choice would have meant less. He opened his palm. Come here, and I can fix the wing faster. Varek looked at me. Don't interfere. I am not. The hearing chamber went quiet, and Lyra stepped toward the handler. Mother inhaled sharply behind me, but I stayed still. Lyra reached the healing bowl and lowered her head and smelled it. The handler waited. Then Lyra looked at me. I didn't call her. Her choice had to survive without an order. Lyra turned away from the bowl. The handler's expression changed first. Not anger. Understanding. Lyra walked across the chamber and stopped beside me. Then she leaned her injured shoulder carefully against my leg. The bond device flashed. Concordance event detected. Voluntary partner choice confirmed. The blank seal lit black and gold. Concordune's seal acquired. Consent channel stabilized. The entire hearing record updated at once. Varek stood. That proves attachment. Cora looked at the crystal. It proves choice. An animal choosing familiarity over medical sense isn't evidence of legal autonomy. The royal handler rose slowly. With respect, Director. Vyrek turned toward him, and the handler looked at Lyra. She understood the offer. That wasn't the testimony Vyrek wanted. Mother released the breath she had been holding. I crouched beside Lyra. You could have taken the medicine. She bumped her nose against my chest, and Sarah smiled behind her. Try not to ruin the moment by explaining it. For once I listened. Varek changed tactics immediately. Then I request emergency seizure on strategic value grounds. Cora didn't look surprised, and she brought up the full record. Initial assignment accepted by Rowan. Repeated voluntary cooperation. Recorded handler rejection. Concordune seal activated through choice. No corruption signature. No forced bond transfer. Cora turned the display toward the hearing panel. The office asked for a compatibility test. She tapped the result. It received 1. Vyrek's face hardened. The crown can't leave an escalating dragon under the sole authority of an 18-year-old candidate with an unknown divine skill. Cora folded her hands. I agree with the monitoring concern. That surprised him. Then she finished. I don't agree that concern creates ownership. The ruling crystal chimed. Emergency seizure denied. Monitoring order continued. Training movements remain reportable. New resources remain under audit. He closed the medicine cases one by one, and the sound bothered Mother more than I expected. I understood why, as we were watching useful things disappear because I refused the leash attached to them. Vyrek noticed too. The offer remains available when reality becomes more important than pride. Yep. I stood. This isn't pride. I rested my hand on Lyra's neck. This is the part you keep failing to understand. Cora slid one legal route across the table before Vyrek could answer. Forge qualifier. Restricted candidates could earn treatment materials and reserve capacity through public service contracts. The next qualifier began at the Royal Forge. The reward list included a fire catalyst and a script steel reservoir. No gift, no custody, a job. Toma was waiting outside the chamber when we left, and he looked at Lyra's still damaged wing. So the rich people offered to heal her if they could keep her. Kiss. And we said no. Lyra said no. He looked at her. Good dragon. Lyra sneezed smoke into his shirt, and Toma looked down at the burn mark. I withdraw the compliment. Mother almost laughed. The Royal Forge looked like a city built inside a furnace, and 3 massive chimneys disappeared into a black ceiling. Molten channels ran between stone platforms under iron bridges, and workers moved through the heat in leather coats marked with burn patches. Master Keld met us at the main floor. He had iron-gray hair, 1 scar over his right eyebrow, and the expression of a man who didn't care who my father was. I liked him immediately. He looked at Lyra's wing. I was told you were damaged. Lyra showed him her teeth, and Keld looked at me. I was talking about both of you. Toma laughed before remembering Keld was the forge master. Cora handed me the qualifier contract. The quill highlighted 2 reward lines. Furnace Art Cinder, Boss Catalyst, Script Steel Reservoir, Facility Saving Reward. The reservoir could hold several prepared revision concepts without forcing them through Lyra immediately. That meant future fights could carry finite options instead of one desperate rewrite. It also meant the forge had to survive. Keld pointed toward the central furnace. Your job is simple. Keep Furnace 3 active while we vent a trapped beast from the lower smelter. A royal handler stepped forward. If containment fails, all internal gates seal. Keld's expression turned cold. My workers are still inside those gates. The equipment is strategic. So are the people who know how to use it. The contract crystal flashed, and qualifier started. Then something hit the furnace wall from below, and the whole floor jumped. The lower gate exploded inward, and an armored furnace beast climbed out through a spray of sparks. Its plates were black iron around a glowing chest chamber, and heat rolled off it hard enough to make the nearest workers stumble. The quill marked the inner flame chamber in gold. Furnace Shart Cinder forming inside. Preserve chamber. The royal handlers chose the other easy option. Seal floor 3. Red barrier started lowering across the worker exits, and Keld grabbed the nearest control lever. Open those gates. A handler blocked him. Equipment containment takes priority. I looked through the half-closed barrier, and 4 smiths were still running toward us. One had a burned arm wrapped against his chest. Toma jammed the left gate. He shoved a steel cart under the descending barrier, and the gate hit the cart and stopped. The handler reached for him, but Lyra stepped between them. Her damaged wing opened just enough to fill the passage. Ikoganes! Keld pointed at the furnace pressure gauge. If we open every lane, the heat climbs. Then we control the heat. The quill showed the widened channels we had built earlier, and it showed the fire catalyst we didn't own yet. Then it showed empty physical space along Lyra's side scales. Vent structure possible, hybrid requirement incomplete. I could draw vents, but I couldn't write the final flame property until we earned the cinder. That was enough for now. I sketched 2 temporary vent paths along Lyra's ribs, and the quill consumed reserve ink. Small armored openings formed between her darker scales, and heat escaped sideways instead of backing into her chest. Keld saw it happen and stopped arguing with the handlers. The forge crews. Every worker looked at him. Follow Rowan's evacuation lanes. The royal handler stared at him, but Keld didn't care. The furnace beast charged the open lane, and Lyra met it before it reached the workers. Its shoulder slammed into her reinforced scales, and one plate cracked near the old damage line. She stayed upright. Quick wind could have carried her around the boss, but the forge gave us nowhere safe to dump that speed. Balun's equation kept the burst short. Lyra turned inside the beast's second charge, and her current ember hit the outer armor. The fire rolled away. Keld's premium burners hit next, and blue flame covered the boss from both sides. The armor glowed, but it didn't open. The beast smashed one burner line apart, and molten fuel sprayed across the floor. Workers scattered. The boss turned toward the central flame chamber, and if it ruptured that furnace, the entire qualifier ended. I saw the problem 1 second before the quill named it. Physical armor resisted external heat, but the chamber inside the boss was already hotter than the forge. We didn't need more fire outside, but we needed a route for its own heat to escape through the armor. Lyra, vents. She understood the drawing we had just built into her body. She inhaled. The weak ember compressed through the new channels, and the flame narrowed. It turned black at the center and gold along the edge. Not stronger everywhere. Concentrated. Hybrid script available. The quill linked the physical vent design to the fire property forming under boss pressure. Lyra fired one thin line at the seam beneath the beast's chestplate, and the metal didn't melt outward. The seam opened inward. The boss's own furnace pressure burst through the gap, and its armor split across the chest. Keld killed the premium burners himself. Hold off. The handler stared at him. My burners are heating the whole shell. Keld pointed at Lyra. Her flame is opening only what she touches. He turned to his record clerk. Put that in the forge report. The boss staggered, and its flame chamber was exposed. Lyra didn't strike the glowing core, but cut the armor around it. The furnace beast collapsed without rupturing the chamber. The quill filled my vision. Boss proof accepted, dragon level increased to 7, furnace shard cinder preserved, fire channel capacity expanded, hybrid script stabilized. I drew the cinder's pattern into Lyra's new vent network, and her next breath came out as controlled black gold fire. The forge workers backed away from the heat. Keld didn't. He watched the flame stop exactly where Lyra stopped it. Cleaner than mine. Something metallic dropped from the boss's opened armor, but it wasn't part of the beast. A thin plate carried the same hidden control writing Lyra had seen in the labyrinth, and Cora sealed it in an evidence case. Third match. Vyrek stood on the upper forge walk watching us, and his face stayed unreadable. Keld noticed him. That seemed to improve Keld's mood. He led me to the authority desk after the furnace stabilized, and a dark metal cylinder waited beside a workshop key. Script steel reservoir. He pushed it toward me. You saved my people before my machines. The royal handler started to protest, but Keld raised one finger. My forge. Cora added her seal to the grant. Preparation room approved, finite revision slots available. The quill opened several empty reserve spaces inside the new cylinder. Every slot would have to be filled before battle and spent once used. Toma carried the reservoir like someone had handed him a royal baby. Don't drop this, he said. I wasn't planning to. He hugged the reservoir tighter anyway. An alarm crystal flashed over the forge exit, and a supply convoy on the Broken Ink Road had been attacked. The route carried materials meant for our new preparation room. Varek left the upper walk before Cora could question him. The Broken Ink rot was burning when we reached the first overturned wagon. Toma's tool satchel lay open in the mud, and the script steel reservoir was 20 feet farther down the road with a split shell. Dark prepared ink leaked through the crack, and I moved toward it. Then I saw rope marks dragging uphill, and Toma's boot prints were mixed into them. The quill opened behind my eyes. Prepared reserve compromised. Living hostage detected. Morph gloss. Catalyst detected ahead. I stopped looking at the reservoir, and Lyra launched over the trees with the old strain line still glowing through her left wing. Her new vents burned faint gold under the darker scales. The trail led to an abandoned royal revision site carved into the cliff. Varek's office crest had been scraped off the doorway badly enough to identify it. 2 masked handlers held Toma in the outer yard, and blood ran from his hairline. A third man stood beside the damaged reservoir. Director Vyrek wants cooperation. Toma spat mud on his boot. That isn't what he wants. The handler hit him, and Lyra's claws cut grooves into the stone beside me. I kept my voice flat. What does he want? Lure dragon. That answer is old. Then give us the quill. Syra's face sharpened beside me, and behind Toma, an old containment door was covered with claw marks. The quill marked boss pressure beyond it. Special condition available: protect hostage, preserve heart glass, preserve evidence. I looked at Toma. Can you move your left hand? He flexed one finger against the rope, and a cutting hook was hidden in his sleeve. The nearest handler looked down. That was enough. Lyra! She hit the yard like a falling wall. Toma cut his rope, while Lyra swept the first handler aside, and the third man smashed the containment seal before running. Something screamed inside. It came out wearing Lyra's face. The creature copied her horns, darker scales and glowing chest vents, then one foreleg changed into a human arm. One wing stretched long while the other stayed short, and a glass heart pulsed under its ribs. Morphglass Chimera. Heart glass intact required. The copy stared at Lyra, and its body rippled until a second Lyra stood across the yard. Then it breathed black gold fire. The color was right. The control was terrible. Flame washed across everything, and Lyra threw herself between it and Toma. The Chimera could steal shapes, but it couldn't steal the work that made them function. Show it the wings. Lyra spread hers, and the copy matched her. Its left shoulder twisted under geometry its body hadn't earned. Lyra snapped through the tightest turn, Balin's equation allowed, and the Chimera followed and folded its copied wing. It crashed through a stone bench. Toma kicked the fallen hook toward me. I am still helping. The Chimera rose again and copied Lyra's vents, and its glass heart shifted behind the ribs. We couldn't break it, as we needed the heart whole. Open the armor. Lyra narrowed her fire into one black gold line, and the copied vent seam split. The creature's chest opened around the heart. It lunged anyway. Lyra caught it by both shoulders and drove it into the floor, and I reached the exposed heart with the quill active. A black transport collar wrapped around it, and Virex seal was stamped into the clasp. I cut the collar instead of the heart, and the Chimera went still. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 8, Morphglass catalyst preserved, full body revision capacity opened, consent required. Cora arrived while Toma held Virex's broken clasp beneath a recording crystal, and the surviving attackers saw her badge and dropped their weapons. Cora examined the seal once. Royal Dragon Office Route Authority is frozen pending investigation. Toma touched the bandage a medic wrapped around his head. I would like the record to include my coat. You don't own a good coat. I did this morning. Cora pointed him toward the medical wagon, then she followed me into the abandoned drawing chamber. Lyra entered in full dragon form with one scorched shoulder and the same strained left wing. Dragon level 8 had open capacity, but it hadn't healed the cost of getting there. The quill unfolded every revision we had earned across the floor. Reinforced scales, corrected wings, script-lit eyes, tail control, chest vents, black gold fire. Then a second outline appeared beside her, and it stood upright with swept horns, wings, a scaled tail, and long dark hair. The same pale violet eyes looked out from the face. Syra stopped joking. Rowan, this isn't armor. I know. The quill wrote the condition. Alternate form possible. Full dragon form retained. Consent required from Lyra. I turned the blueprint toward her. This is an option. Lyra studied the upright body. It would help with precision fighting. I nodded. But if you don't want it, we leave. Cora kept the recorder running, and Toma watched from the doorway. Nobody answered for Lyra, and she stepped to the blueprint and touched it with her nose. Choice accepted. Then her forehead pressed against mine, and one clear thought crossed the bond. Do it. I placed the preserved heart glass into the quill's drawing field, and black gold script wrapped around Lyra. Her frame folded inward while every earned marking stayed visible. Forelegs became scaled arms, and her chest narrowed without losing the vents. Long black violet hair fell beneath swept horns, and wings settled behind her shoulders. A scaled tail struck the floor. When the light cleared, Lyra stood on 2 feet with pale violet dragon eyes and black gold script running beneath her scales. The old strain line still glowed through the left wing. She flexed claw-tipped fingers and looked at Toma, and he stared back. That is going to make the palace extremely annoying. Lyra's first spoken word came out rough but clear. Good. The sabotage had spent our preparation window, and Lyra still had to prove the new body before the bracket locked. Lyra's new body lasted less than 5 minutes before Cora tried to break it. She led us into the abandoned site's central yard while investigators collected the transport collar. 3 captured handlers were already kneeling against the wall. 2 more had disappeared into the upper ruins during the Chimera fight. Cora looked at Lyra's new hands, wings, tail, and the old strain line still glowing through her left wing. Identity choice is recorded. She raised her badge. Function isn't. Toma frowned through his fresh bandage. She just helped kill a Chimera. In dragon form, Cora pointed toward the upper walkway. Varric will call this cosmetic, unstable, or manipulated unless I have independent proof. Lyra rolled one shoulder, and her balance was different on 2 legs. The quill showed the problem without being asked. Living blueprint active, new center of gravity, wing loading changed, tail compensation available. I looked at Lyra. You don't have to prove anything while injured. She looked toward the ruined walkway, and one of the missing handlers had just raised a crossbow. I think I do. Her voice was still rough. It was also hers. The bolt came down toward the evidence table, and Lyra moved before I could call. Her tail planted against the floor, and one wing opened halfway. She pivoted around the injured side instead of through it, and the bolt passed behind her. She crossed the yard in 3 steps and caught the shooter's wrist before he could reload. The second missing handler rushed from a stairwell with a hooked blade. I started to speak, then I stopped. Living blueprint wasn't supposed to make me better at controlling her, but it was supposed to let her use what we built. Lyra ducked under the hook, and her black gold fire stayed dark inside her vents. She didn't need it. One clawed hand caught the attacker's elbow, and the other took the weapon. She turned his own momentum into the wall and pinned him without breaking the arm. The first handler tried to pull free, but Lyra folded one wing around him like a barrier and kept the strained wing clear. Toma looked at me. You didn't tell her any of that. No. Korra's recorder tracked every movement. The second handler reached for a document pouch at his belt, but Lyra saw it first. She stepped on the pouch strap instead of the man's hand, and the evidence stayed intact. The fight ended with both men breathing, both weapons on the ground, and every record untouched. Korra lowered her badge. Independent action confirmed. The quill answered. Living blueprint stabilized. Alternate form functional. Full dragon form retained. No healing granted. I liked that last line, and the system was finally learning how suspicious I was. Korra made the result public before Vyrek could move first. By the time we reached the Royal Registration Hall, the independent combat record was already on the central board. Foreign banners hung above the court rails, and every kingdom had sent observers for the centennial bracket. Mother stood near the servants' doorway because nobody had changed where she was allowed to stand yet. Leon waited beside Solar Crown under the royal banner, and the legendary dragon looked exactly as powerful as it had on selection day. Leon looked from Lyra's new body to the record board, and his expression tightened. He recovered quickly. Changing shape doesn't make her royal quality. Lyra's tail moved once behind her, but she didn't answer. The king sat above the registration desk with Vyrek at his right, and Korra walked straight to the clerk. Record Rowan as the second royal contender. The king's voice stopped the pen. Nihilgai. The entire foreign gallery went quiet, and Korra turned. State the legal reason. His jaw set. The kingdom already has its champion. Then state why your binding wager names a championship result between both sons. That landed harder. Mother lifted her head near the servant's rail. Leon looked at the king, and Vyrek stepped forward. Examiner, the dragon remains under irregular strategic review. Korra held up the broken ink road evidence case. Your office's route authority is currently frozen because this seal was recovered from the sabotage site. Vyrek stopped talking, and a foreign captain leaned toward another and whispered something behind his hand. The king looked at the record board, and my readiness failure was still there. Every attempt to make one result disappear had created another record beside it. Korra placed my original wager copy on the desk. Register him or publicly void your own binding agreement. The king couldn't do either quietly anymore, and he looked at me. For the first time, I didn't see anger first. I saw calculation. Then he spoke loudly enough for the foreign gallery. Rowan will represent the crown as a royal contender. The clerk's pen moved, and Mother covered her mouth with one hand. Leon's face went still. A foreign observer with ice blue hair watched me from the opposite rail without smiling. Korra noticed my glance. Flash Egeric, the leading foreign champion. Direk gave me one short nod. Not approval. Assessment. The registration crystal flashed. Royal contender confirmed. Protected bracket access granted. Prepared revision views approved. A sealed case opened beside the clerk. 6 narrow vials sat inside, each filled with processed ink from earlier boss residues and official bracket stock. Finite revisions. 6 chances to change and exchange without inventing a new ability. Toma picked up the case carefully. I am officially nervous. Good. Leon looked at the vials, then he looked at Lyra. The laughter from the selection hall was gone. Registration was safe, but now the bracket itself decided how long we had to prepare between impossible fights. The first international opponent looked like someone had taught a castle to breathe. Its dragon stood in the center of the arena behind overlapping gray armor plates. Every plate was thick enough to stop a siege bolt. A shield ridge covered the neck, and another protected the chest. Even the wings folded behind armored shutters. The foreign handler stood beside it with both hands behind his back, and looked at Lyra's smaller upright body and smiled once. Your fire won't penetrate. He pointed at her darker scales. And armor won't win a pushing match against mine. That was fair. I looked at the 6 revision vials in Toma's case. I took one. 5 remained. Syra floated beside the arena wall. Rowan, don't spend it because the opponent is large. I was thinking the same thing. Good. The quill opened over the fortress dragon, and script sight revealed hundreds of load lines moving through the armor. No single weak plate mattered, as every impact shifted pressure into 3 others. The dragon wasn't wearing armor, it was wearing a system. The bell rang, and the fortress dragon charged without hurrying. Its front plate hit the floor like a gate dropping, and Lyra's black gold fire struck the chest. The flame narrowed exactly where I wanted, but the armor redistributed heat around the point. Nothing opened. The handler didn't even blink. Againagol! Lyra moved left, and the fortress dragon rotated with her. Its side plates closed before she reached the angle, so she tried the other direction. The shutters moved again. Direk watched from the foreign rail with his arms folded. Leon watched from the royal side with Solar Crown behind him. I could feel both of them studying the same thing. Our toolkit was public now, so was the answer to it. Direct fire failed. Direct force would fail harder. The quill painted cleaner script lines around the fortress dragon's feet, and every armor shift required the body underneath to move first. The shell followed the route, and that meant the route could be controlled. Lyra, stop attacking. The handler raised one eyebrow, and Lyra backed away instead. The fortress dragon followed. I drew the first vector across the arena floor, then a second, then a third. We weren't trying to reach the chest, but we were choosing where the armor had to face. Lyra ran toward the left boundary, and the fortress dragon turned to block. She cut behind it before the plates finished closing, but its tail swept low. She jumped over it using the new body's lighter center, and the strained wing stayed folded. The opponent corrected again, and I saw the pattern. Every full rotation forced the right rear plate to open one handspan for balance. Not a weak point, a movement requirement. Third turn. Lyra forced another rotation, and the gap appeared. Her fire touched it, but the armor redirected heat again. The opening closed. Too slow. I uncorked the first Revision and prepared concepts appeared. Reinforce, balance, edge, conductivity. Nothing new, nothing free. I chose edge and balance together within the narrow limit the vial allowed, and the quill drew temporary script over Lyra's forearms and tail. Revision consumed. Combat edit duration limited. Lyra moved again, and the fortress dragon committed to the same rotation. This time she didn't fire, but slid through the opening and hooked one reinforced forearm beneath the moving plate. The handler's smile vanished. Almost. The dragon tried, but Lyra's temporary edge caught the plate track. It couldn't lock. The whole armor system hesitated for 1 second, and that was all script sight needed. Black gold lines lit across the inner frame. Vents. Lyra's chest channels opened, and she fired inward through the exposed track. The flame didn't melt the armor, but heated the locking mechanism behind it. The fortress dragon pulled back, but its own plates jammed halfway through the next redistribution. Lyra released the track before the pressure could crush her arm, then she ran. Not away, around. The opponent tried to follow with half its armor locked in the wrong direction, and its weight shifted late. One front leg crossed the other, and Lyra's tail hit the ankle at exactly the wrong moment for the fortress dragon. The giant body dropped to one knee, and the arena shook. The quill filled my vision. Boss class proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 9. Precision capacity expanded. Armor distribution available. The darker scales along Lyra's shoulders shifted into cleaner overlapping bands, and black gold script lines narrowed along her arms and wings. The change wasn't bigger, it was cleaner. That fit the fight. The fortress dragon tried to rise, but its own jammed armor pulled it sideways. Lyra stepped onto the chest plate and held one clawed hand over the open track. The handler stared at the position. If he ordered another push, Lyra could open the interlocking system again. If he ordered the dragon to stay down, the match was over. He exhaled. I concede. The official crystal repeated the result across the arena. Foreign handler conceded. Bracket victory confirmed. The crowd reacted louder than I expected. Derek didn't. He was already speaking to 2 people in his corner, and one of them erased something from a tactical board. Then Darik looked at me again, and his plan had changed. Toma laid the 5 remaining revision vials on the repair table like they were organs. Lyra sat on the low platform in her upright body while Keld checked the bruising under her forearm scales. The old strain line in her left wing had gone from yellow to orange after the fortress round. That bothered me more than the bruise. The quill agreed. Left wing recovery incomplete. Temporary edits don't repair structural strain. Current reserve insufficient for full reconstruction. I had known that, but seeing it printed still made it worse. Keld tapped the wing joint with 2 fingers. No hard acceleration until this cools. I opened each vial tag without breaking the seal. Reinforce could protect one overloaded joint for a few exchanges. That mattered because using a vial too early didn't just cost ink. It removed one answer from Leon and the final rounds. Toma wrote the options on a scrapboard. Which one do we spend next? I don't know yet. He looked relieved. That is the best answer you have given me all week. I ignored her and marked the 5 seals intact. The bracket crystal on the wall updated behind him. Sky Maze Specialist. Straight line speed advantage extreme. Toma looked from the crystal to Keld. That seems badly timed. It is. Cora stood at the bay doorway with her arms folded. The bracket won't delay for recovery. Toma closed the vial case before the next match started. We moved to the observation rail instead of wasting the short break pretending Lyra was healthy. The sky maze was being assembled below, and stone towers rose from the arena floor on moving tracks. Bridges shifted between them, and air gates opened and shut along the upper lanes. The speed specialist flew a demonstration route while officials tested the geometry. His dragon crossed the entire arena before the crowd finished reacting to the start. Then it hit the first turn, and that was where the picture changed. The dragon had to climb before turning, and it lost height on the correction. It recovered on the next straightaway and became a blur again. I watched 3 more passes. Same pattern. Win the straight, spend distance fixing the turn, win the straight again. The crowd saw speed, but balance equation showed the cost. Vector sketching drew the recovery lanes over the maze. Toma leaned over the rail. Rowan, you are doing the face. What face? The one where someone else's good news becomes bad news. Derek stood 2 rails away and had been watching the same demonstration. Your dragon is slower. He said it without mockery. Yes. Then you will increase speed. No. That got his attention. I looked at Lyra's orange strain line. The last time I chased one bigger number, she won the straightaway and crashed because I forgot the turn existed. Derek glanced at the wing. So you will enter slower on purpose. I will enter able to finish. His mouth moved slightly. Not a smile, interest. Leon arrived behind us with Solar Crown, and the legendary dragon filled the walkway with gold light. Leon saw the Sky Maze demonstration and then looked at my damaged wing. You finally found an opponent you can't redesign around. I kept watching the maze. Maybe. He leaned one arm on the rail. You should use another speed rewrite. That made me look at him, and Leon smiled. He remembered the crash as well as I did, and he wanted me to repeat it. You were happier when I made that mistake. You were easier to understand. There it was. The quill had become dangerous to him once I stopped using it like a wish. I closed the interface. No speed rewrite. Leon's smile thinned. Then lose slowly. He walked away. Solar Crown followed, but the dragon looked at Lyra's injured wing for 1 extra second before turning. We used cooling salts around the strained joint, and Keld tightened a support wrap below the wing root. Toma replaced the cracked outer casing on the reservoir without pretending the lost ink had returned. Neither body was healed. I opened the quill over the sky maze map, and no new power appeared. We already owned the answer if we used it correctly. The fight wasn't about catching a faster dragon, it was about arriving where the faster dragon would need to recover. Lyra studied the map beside me, and I pointed to the first 3 safe lanes. You choose after that. Her pale violet eyes moved to mine. That was the other lesson from Living Blueprint, and if I planned every step for her, I was rebuilding another kind of cage. She nodded once. The arena bell rang below. Cora opened the repair bay door. Call time. Toma put the 5 remaining vials into the case, and Lyra stood carefully and folded the strained wing behind her. The speed specialist asked for a straight race before the bell. His dragon hovered above the first sky maze tower with narrow silver wings and almost no visible armor. The handler pointed toward the longest open lane. 1 pass. Winner takes the center route. The crowd liked the idea immediately, and Leon liked it more. I looked at Lyra, and she stood beside me in the upright body with her strained wing folded tight. Then she shifted, and black gold script rolled across her frame. Her full dragon body expanded onto the starting platform with the same darker scales, chest vents, and pale violet eyes. The specialist smiled. Good. I shook my head. No race. The crowd booed before he could answer, but he laughed. Eager of agreeing to your best fight. The maze bell rang. He launched first, and his dragon crossed the open lane like an arrow. Lyra didn't chase, but took the lower route between 2 moving towers. The specialist reached the first gate before us, then the gate rotated. He climbed hard to avoid the closing stone, but Lyra was already beneath it. Balin's Equasun drew the lost distance in my vision, and Vector Skeshing marked the recovery lane. Left tower. Lyra hit the wall with 2 claws and kicked sideways through the next opening. The specialist recovered and shot past us again. The crowd roared. Toma's voice reached me through the team crystal. He is ahead by half the arena. I know. That sounded very calm. I am trying something new. The next turn arrived, and the speed dragon had to widen again. Lyra cut inside. The gap shrank. The specialist looked down at us for the first time. His handler wiped the longest lane from the route board and pointed toward the offset gates. The specialist understood what we were doing. Then he changed the route. That was the real fight. He stopped using the obvious recovery lanes, and his dragon dove through an air gate before it fully opened. 1 wing scraped the pressure field and still held. Script's sight marked 3 gates changing at once, and Lyra chose the middle one without waiting for me. I almost corrected her, then I saw why. The outer 2 routes were faster, but they also ended in hard turns. The middle route opened onto a spiral. The specialist entered above us, and his raw speed carried him around the first curve. The second curve tightened. His dragon climbed, but Lyra stayed low. The third curve tightened again, and the strained left wing flashed orange. I felt the pain through linked brace, and my shoulder lit up with it. We couldn't keep this turn radius safely. I opened the vial case. 5 seals. I took the second vial. Prepared balance concept available. No new anatomy, no healing, 1 correction window. I uncorked it, and black gold script flashed across Lyra's tail and wing roots. Revitune fuel consumed. 4 remain. Use it once. Lyra folded the outside wing halfway, and her tail control surfaces shifted. The dragon dropped through the spiral instead of fighting to stay level, while the specialist stayed above and fast. That became his problem. The final opening was below us, and Lyra exited first. The crowd changed from shouting to confusion. He dove after us, and the last third of the maze became a fight for space. Every time he found a straight lane, Lyra occupied the turn at the end of it first. He passed us twice, but both times he had to give the distance back to correct. I stopped calling individual moves. Own the exits. Lyra understood and took 1 high gate I wouldn't have chosen. The specialist followed because it looked faster, but the gate shifted sideways. Lyra rolled through the moving opening, and his dragon had to break. That was the match. Lyra landed on the center platform while he was still correcting above the last tower. The official crystal flashed. Route completion confirmed. Sky Maze victory. Boss class proof accepted. Dragon level 10 threshold opened. Combat revision capacity available through prepared concepts. The quill didn't say dragon level increased. Not yet. Leon was still on the board. The speed specialist landed across from us and looked at Lyra's strained wing. Then he looked at the maze behind him. I was faster. He laughed once, then he bowed. You flew better. The reaction spread beyond the arena rail, and 1 foreign captain called for the maze map. Another asked for Lyra's turn data, and a third sent a runner toward the records desk before the result crystal finished glowing. Leon watched all of it from the royal box, and Solar Crown stood behind him with its head high. Leon didn't look angry. That would have been easier. He looked focused. He had stopped expecting the quill to defeat itself for him. Derek didn't join them but walked to the edge of his platform and looked directly at me. The crash changed your method. It needed to. He nodded toward Lyra. For the first time, Derek smiled. Toma met us with the vial case. 4 revision vials remained. Lyra's wing strain hadn't improved, and my shoulder hurt from sharing the spiral load. The victory board updated before we reached the repair corridor. The foreign captains didn't ask whether they could see my tactical file, but argued over who had requested it first. Cora ended that argument by sealing the record desk. Protected preparation only. One captain protested, but she stared at him until he remembered she controlled the paperwork. Derek stood behind the group with his corner team, and he didn't ask for access. He watched Cora hand me the workshop key, then he turned to his strategist. Rebuild the final plan. The man looked surprised. Around Leon? Derek looked at me instead. Around whoever survives Leon. That was more respect than cheering would have been. The protected workshop held one clean table and no audience. Toma placed the 4 remaining revision vials on the left side. Keld placed the recovered boss residues on the right. Roost-hide scale dust, a shaving from the preserved wing structure, perception crystal residue, storm balance powder, furnace heart ash, a sliver of morph gloss left after Lyra's full body revision. None of those pieces could create a new power by themselves. The quill opened above them. Sovereign Composite ink assembly available. 1 batch possible. Failure destroys all remaining residues. Writing hand backlash severe. Toma saw it on my face. That last part is bad. Keld didn't look up from the mixing bowl. There is enough for 1 vial. The one? Gwilyn. He pointed at the 4 revision vials. Oh! I knew. The composite ink could support 1 emergency redraw using every concept already planted into the blueprint, but it couldn't invent a miracle. It could only let me rebuild something we already understood under conditions that should make drawing impossible. Sarah floated over the table. And if your hand fails? Then I finish before it does. She didn't smile. Keld mixed the residues in the order the quill required, and the scale dust became the carrier. The perception crystal kept the script readable under distortion, and the storm powder stabilized moving geometry. The furnace heart ash gave the ink a path through heat, and morph gloss kept the finished line compatible across both of Lyra's body forms. The preserved wing shaving went in last, and the mixture turned black. Gold light moved through it like a thin heartbeat. Sovereign Composite ink completed. Single redraw charge. No unearned concepts permitted. Permanent backlash risk accepted by wielder. I sealed the vial, and pain ran through my writing fingers without me even opening it. A warning. Keld wrapped the vial in shot cloth, and Cora placed an official seal over the cap. Only you break this. Understood. And not against Leon unless there is no other way. I looked at Lyra, and she was resting in her upright body with the strained wing folded behind her. No. The composite vial had to survive the semifinal if we wanted any answer left for the unknown final. The king intercepted us outside the protected workshop, and he had dismissed most of the court. Mother was there because Cora had requested her as a wager witness. Leon wasn't. That told me the conversation wasn't meant for him. The king looked at the sealed composite vial in Keld's hands, then he looked at me. I can restore your full status immediately. Mother went still. I said nothing. He continued. Royal workshops. Unrestricted materials. Private healers. Your mother returned to protected palace housing. The same things he had threatened to remove now sounded generous in his mouth. I asked, what do you want? His jaw tightened. Defeat Leon if you must, the king said. That part cost him. Then came the real request. He added, but whichever son advances must bring the centennial title home. I looked at Cora, and her recorder was active. Then I looked at Mother, and she was watching the king instead of me. I said, say it again. The king narrowed his eyes and said, you heard me. I want Mother to hear exactly who needs whom. The silence stretched, and Keld suddenly became very interested in the ceiling. Toma didn't bother pretending. The king's face hardened. Then foreign voices carried from the nearby arena rail. He knew this hallway wasn't private enough to threaten me anymore, so he repeated it. I need you to protect this kingdom's prestige if you defeat Leon. Mother's eyes widened, and Cora's recorder flashed. I told him, I don't need restored status. His expression shifted. I already earned my place. I pointed at Mother. And her safety is already written into the wager if I win. He looked at the sealed vial again. The king asked, then what do you want? For you to keep the agreement you already made. That was the answer he hated most, because it gave him nothing new to trade. The semi-final board lit across the corridor wall. Rowan against Leon. Solar Crown's image appeared beside my brother's name, and the repair bay went quiet behind us. Mother took my hand once. You are sure? I looked through the glass toward the arena where Leon was already entering beneath the royal banner. No. That surprised her, and I squeezed her hand. But I know what we built. Lyra stepped beside me. 4 revision vials remained. 1 sealed Sovereign Composite ink vial remained untouched. Her left wing was still strained, and my shoulder still hurt. Nothing about us was fresh. That was fine. Neither was the proof that had brought us here. The semifinal bell rang before the king cleared the corridor. Leon entered beneath the royal banner with Solar Crown beside him, and the dragon's gold scales threw light across half the arena. My brother looked at Lyra's strained wing and then at the sealed composite vial in Keld's hands. You saved the expensive answer for me. I handed the vial back to Keld. I saved it from you. Lyra entered in her full dragon body, and dark layered scales covered stronger shoulders. Pale violet script burned around her eyes, and black gold light moved through her chest vents. Solar Crown spread its wings opposite her, and the royal dragon was still bigger, faster, and filled with more mana than Lyra. Nothing about Leon's advantage was fake, and that was why beating him mattered. Cora raised one hand. The royal semifinal will determine the binding wager. Leon lowered his stance. This is where grades stop protecting you. I felt Lyra's answer through the bond, and she wanted him to try. Cora dropped her hand. Solar Crown moved first, and gold fire struck before Lyra finished opening her wings. She rolled under the center, but the edge caught her strained side. Pain ripped through linked brays and drove my knee into the stone. Leon sent Solar Crown straight at the injured wing, but Lyra turned inside the charge. One gold shoulder still hit her ribs and carried her across the field. Her darker scales held. The arena floor didn't. Leon had watched every match, and Solar Crown filled the air with false flares until Script's sight split across too many targets. The real beam formed behind them. Sarah appeared beside me. He is feeding your sight more truth than you can use. The beam cut toward Lyra's left wing, and I opened the first vial. Reinforced concept accepted. Reevaluation fuel consumed. 3 remain. Black gold script wrapped the wing root before the beam landed, and the joint stayed attached. Lyra still fell. Solar Crown landed over her and spread white gold heat across the ground, and Lyra's ink fire pushed back one section. The other 5 kept closing. Leon had turned her strongest attack into a contest of fuel. I opened the second vial. Conductivity concept accepted. Reevaluation fuel consumed. 2 remain. I drew one root from Lyra's chest vents through her scales and into the floor, and the heat entered her armor. Black gold lines carried it around her heart, and the stone behind her exploded instead. Lyra came through the smoke on 2 feet. Long black violet hair moved behind her horns, and one wing stayed tight against the injured side. Solar Crown snapped at the smaller target, but Lyra caught one horn and let its momentum pull her past the jaw. She ran along the gold neck plates, and Leon changed his linked stance. Solar Crown rolled and threw her, and she landed beside me. He knows every revision, Leon said. He pressed one hand against his contract mark. You built a dragon from mistakes. Solar Crown rose behind him with fire between its horns. I started with the finished answer. I watched Leon plant the same back heel whenever he pushed full power through the bond. He had studied our tools, but he had never studied what his certainty made predictable. Lyra, make him commit. She launched towards Solar Crown's injured side feint, but Leon recognized the bait and ordered a full descending strike anyway. Solar Crown came down like a falling sun, but Lyra waited until the last instant. Then she folded beneath its chest. Her tail turned her around the impact line, and ink fire cut across one gold vent seam. The armor opened without touching the heart beneath it. Solar Crown twisted, but Lyra shifted back into her full dragon body inside its turn. Her shoulders drove under one wing, and her jaws closed around the reinforced base without biting through it. She pinned Solar Crown against the arena wall. Leon forced more power through the bond, and his back heel locked. Linked brays carried Lyra's pressure through me, and my injured shoulder screamed as I broke the stance he needed for the command. Solar Crown's gathered fire vanished, and Lyra drove the second wing flat and held both without tearing either one. The gold dragon fought once more. Lyra held. Then Solar Crown stopped moving. Leon looked at the legendary dragon pinned beneath the one everyone had called a runt. The whole arena waited. I yield. Korra's crystal repeated the words across every board. Royal semifinal complete. Rowan advances. Boss proof accepted. Dragon level increased to 10. Combat revision link stabilized. The script along Lyra's body deepened. I asked her to release Solar Crown, and the royal dragon rose and returned to Leon's side. I didn't reach for its contract. I had never needed his dragon. I needed the truth about mine. The championship board turned black and gold, and Korra placed the original wager beneath the recording crystal. She recited every term the king had spoken 4 days earlier. If Leon won, Mira and I would leave forever. If I won, the binding magic would protect her home and income, restore my standing, and enforce the public terms the king had offered. The king tried to interrupt, but gold bands closed around his wrists. The board declared me victor, and a protected residence seal appeared under Mira's name. Permanent income confirmed. Servant status released. Royal retaliation banned. The new platform didn't open inside the servants section. It rose beside the royal box, and a silver path formed between Mira's seat and the protected seal bearing her name. The nobles nearest the path pulled back. The palace workers didn't. They stood and watched the woman they had known in an apron walk toward a place the king could no longer take away. Mira stopped at the first step. She looked at the king, then she looked at the residence seal. I don't want another palace room. Korra lifted her recorder. State the correction you require. I want a home with its own deed. Her voice shook once and steadied. I want wages that don't depend on his mood. She looked toward the servants behind her. And I want every worker punished for helping my son restored. The binding board flashed. Independent residence granted. Permanent income secured. Workers fired for helping us were reinstated. Korra looked at me. Your first authority order is recorded. I nodded toward Mira. It was hers. She crossed the silver path, and the workers touched their fists to their chests as she passed. Mira reached it and turned back toward them. You helped us when helping us was dangerous. She didn't make a speech, but simply bowed to the workers before she sat. That made half the noble box look away. The binding board still held one unfinished term. Public humiliation selected by the victor. The king stared at the line, and Leon's hands curled at his sides. I could have made them kneel. I could have made them crawl across the field where they had laughed. That would have lasted 60 seconds. The lie they built had lasted my whole life. I choose the truth. The king's face changed. Korra didn't. State the required declaration. I looked at the man who stole my earned choice. Tell the kingdom who ranked first. Gold script closed around his throat, and he tried to resist until the magic tightened. Rowan ranked first. The arena carried his voice to every platform. Tell them what you did. I gave his earned dragon selection to Leon. The words sounded worse in his own voice. Tell them who caused the scandal. His eyes moved toward Mira. but the binding magic pulled them back to the board. Or, I did. Mira didn't lower her head. The script moved to Leon, and he looked at me with more hatred than he had shown after yielding. I gave him one sentence. Say the dragon you mocked beat yours. His jaw shook. Lyra beat Solar Crown. The board sealed the declaration, but the arena didn't cheer immediately. First came the sound of thousands of people understanding that the king's official story had just died in his own mouth. Then the workers started clapping, and the rest followed. Leon turned towards Solar Crown, and his contract mark flared hard enough to burn red around his wrist. Attack. Solar Crown didn't move. Leon stepped closer. The match is over, but my command isn't. The royal dragon looked at him, then it looked across the field at Lyra. Lyra stood in her full dragon body with fresh script lines and 2 injured wings folded carefully behind her. Solar Crown walked past Leon. The arena went quiet again. The legendary dragon stopped in front of us and lowered its head until the gold horns faced the stone. Not surrender. Recognition. I placed no hand on its head. I made no offer for its contract. You chose your path already. Solar Crown raised its eyes. Stayed with him. The dragon returned to Leon's side. It remained his. That mattered. Trust wasn't another thing I needed to steal back. Cora closed the domestic record. The wager is fulfilled. She turned toward the arena gates. The centennial finale will begin after field reset. Dyrick entered before the workers finished clearing the broken stone, and his bronze and ivory dragon followed with broad wings held perfectly level. Neither of them looked at Leon. Derek stopped at the center line and faced me. He said, "Your family fight is finished." Yes. He glanced at the final gates and said, "This one is for the title." One. Toma reached us with the vial case. 2 revision vials remained. The composite vial was still sealed. Dragon level 10 had increased our capacity, but it hadn't erased what winning cost. Mother called from her protected platform. "Come back when it is done." That was why I could face Derek as a champion instead of a desperate son. The final gates opened. 4 narrow fins ran along its tail, and every part of its body looked built to change direction without wasting motion. Derek wore slate armor with no crown crest on it. He carried the title of his kingdom without needing to display it on every surface. Cora stood between us. She announced, "Centennial Finial." Derek looked at Lyra's damaged wing. "I won't avoid it. I wouldn't respect you if you did." He nodded once, and Cora began the match. Derek controlled the opening before Lyra left the ground. His dragon beat both wings once and created 3 compressed pressure rings across the arena. The first ring forced Lyra high, and the second closed the safe turn. The third carried Derek himself to our left side. He wasn't only commanding from a platform, but moved with his dragon's pressure field like part of the formation. Lyra shifted into her upright body to cut through the narrow gap, but Derek expected it. His dragon's tail fins turned, and the pressure ring rotated sideways and drove her back toward the strained wing. I saw the root 1 breath late, and Derek saw me see it. Rowan, that body gives precision. His dragon closed from above. But it also tells me where you need space. Lyra blocked the dive with her good wing, and the collision threw both of us across the center line. Script sight showed the pressure walls, and vector sketching showed where they would move. Derek changed them before either pattern settled. He wasn't hiding one trick, but he was watching our answer and rebuilding the question. The foreign corner called a new formation. Triangle became spiral. The bronze dragon climbed while Dyrick cut across the ground below us. Lyra could evade one. Not both. I opened the first of our last 2 vials. Edge concept accepted. Existing wing and tail surfaces only. Revision viol consumed. 1 remains. Black gold lines sharpened along Lyra's good wing and tail fins, and she cut through the edge of the spiral instead of riding it. The pressure wall broke around her, and Derek's corner stopped calling the old pattern. Their strategist ripped 1 page off the board. Switch to closed formation. The crowd heard it. Derek had forced every opponent to react all day, but now his own corner was rebuilding around us. Lyra returned to full dragon size and drove toward the bronze dragon, and Derek's dragon met her without giving ground. Bronze claws tore 2 lines through Lyra's shoulder scales, and Inkfire opened 1 ivory plate near the chest. The plate closed again under a second pressure ring, and neither side had found a clean finish. Derek changed the field again, and his dragon slammed both wings downward. A vertical wall of compressed air split the arena between Lyra and me. Linked brays stretched across it and filled my body with static pain. Derek crossed the wall on his dragon's current and landed beside me, but he didn't reach for Lyra. He attacked the link. 1 armored forearm hit my injured shoulder, and my left side stopped working. Lyra turned toward me, but the bronze dragon blocked her with a pressure ring. I opened the last save file. Balance concept accepted. 1 emergency correction. Revision viol consumed. Reserve empty. I used it on my own linked stance instead of Lyra's body, and the quill shifted the pressure path through the brace. Derek's next hit drove through my legs instead of the damaged shoulder, and I stayed upright. It bought 1 exchange, but it didn't bring Lyra through the wall. Derek swept my feet and pinned 1 arm behind me, while his dragon forced Lyra higher with every wing beat. The crowd expected me to give a command. I almost did. Then I remembered the maze. Living blueprint wasn't another leash. The Concordoon seal carried 1 clear thought from me to Lyra. What? Lyra stopped trying to reach me by the route Derek controlled, and she folded her wings and dropped beneath the bronze dragon. The pressure ring followed too late, and halfway down, she shifted into her upright body. Her tail caught the lower arena rail, and she swung under the pressure wall instead of through it. Derek looked up. That was his first mistake. I rolled with the pressure on my pinned arm and pulled him off balance, and Lyra crossed the remaining distance in 3 steps. She caught Derek's wrist before he could reset, and her other wing opened between us and his dragon's descending claws. The impact drove her knee into the floor. She still held the barrier. I had given no command. She had figured out the fight, changed bodies, and chosen who needed saving. Derek's grip loosened, and he looked from Lyra to me. Not your weapon. No. He pushed himself upright while his dragon landed behind him. Your equal. The arena heard him, and Lyra released his wrist. Both pairs reset at the center line, and for one clean breath, the final was balanced. Then a red-silver script ignited beneath Derek's dragon's bronze scales. The dragon screamed. Derek's contract mark went dark. High above the arena, Varek placed one hand on the Royal Dragon Office control console. The kingdom required insurance. The bronze dragon's bones began changing against its will. The final had no clock on a wall, but Varek's next control pulse became the deadline. Derek shouted his dragon's name, but the contract carried nothing back. The red-silver script spread from the chest to every joint, and bronze scales thickened into black-edged plates. The ivory wings split into jagged layers that kept growing after the bone should have stopped. 3 false cores opened beneath the skin, but none of them moved with the dragon's natural heartbeat. Cora struck the emergency seal. Clear the lower stands. The arena barriers turned outward to form evacuation lanes. Derek ran toward his dragon, but a pressure wave threw him across the field. Varek kept one hand on the control console above us. This is an official protection measure. Cora's recorder flashed toward him. The signature matches the Royal Dragon Office glyph recovered on the Brokun Ink Road. Her voice carried through the arena. Director Varek is under arrest for forbidden control activation. Guards closed around his booth. The forced dragon attacked Lyra first, and its new wing crossed the arena like a blade. Lyra blocked with her darker shoulder scales, and 3 plates shattered. Linked Braze sent the impact through my ribs and dropped me beside Derek. He pushed himself up on one arm. That isn't my command. Hey, no. The dragon came again. Script sight marked the chest core, then the mark split into 3. Multi-line scan tracked all of them, but the control writing moved between false signals before the quill could settle. Lyra fired one narrow line of ink fire at the center core, but a pale film spread across the forced armor and swallowed the flame. Varek had built the program from every public record we gave the championship. It knew her sight. It knew her fire. It knew the limits of her damaged wing. The forced dragon struck the arena with both foreclaws, and the floor lifted under Lyra. She turned away from the false cores and attacked the body carrying them, and her tail knocked one black-edged plate loose. For one instant, its real eye found Derek before the program pulled it shut again. Uma. He was already moving along the support rail. The empty Raverjune vial case hung from one hand, and the sealed composite vial was in the other. A control pulse crossed the arena before he reached the stairs, and every reserve slot on the script steel reservoir went dark. Prepared reserve empty. Combat revision unavailable. Only sovereign composite ink remains. Toma threw the wrapped vial, and I caught it with my good hand. The force dragon saw the motion, and it changed targets. Lyra drove between us. The black-edged jaws closed around her strained left wing, and she tried to roll with the bite. The program locked its neck. Bone snapped. The wing tore free below the reinforced root. Lyra's scream hit me through the bond before I heard it in the arena. My writing hand closed so hard around the vial that the glass cut my palm. She fell in full dragon form, and the force dragon raised one claw for the finishing strike. Derek threw himself onto its leg and slowed it for half a breath, and that was enough for me to reach Lyra. Her dark scales were cracked from shoulder to chest, and one side of her body ended in a bleeding wing root. The pale violet script around her eyes kept flickering toward the false cores. She was still trying to solve the fight. Sarah appeared beside the ruined wing. Rowan, the composite can rebuild only what you already understand. I understand her wing. You understood the first one too. That landed where it needed to. Syra looked at my bleeding hand. And your fingers may not work after this. I pressed my forehead against Lyra's. This can hurt you worse than the loss. The Concord Dunes seal carried the full risk between us, and I didn't hide any part of it. Lyra's body folded inward until she stood on 2 legs beside me, and her remaining wing dragged across the stone. Long, black-violet hair covered the blood on her shoulder. She caught my wrist with one clawed hand. Thra. I broke Cora's seal on the composite vial, and black ink rose with gold light moving through it. Every earlier quest moved inside the mixture. Scale, perception, storm, fire, morph gloss, and the preserved wing aligned inside one earned blueprint. Nothing inside the vial was new. The force dragon lunged again, but Derek and Cora's barrier crews bought me 3 breaths. I opened Living Blueprint over Lyra's shoulder, and Unatumi Overlay showed every tendon path. Balin's Equace Hun corrected the weight before I drew it, and Vector Sketching curved the new wing for motion instead of display. I drew the first bone in black gold light, and my fingers went numb before the second. I used my whole arm. The new structure spread from the surviving root, and script-lined bone became membrane. The leading edge sharpened. The joints settled into the corrected angles I had once failed to understand. Lyra shifted back into full dragon form before the final line closed, and her body expanded until her shadow covered the evacuation lanes. One rebuilt wing opened with black gold script running from root to tip, while the other wing remained scarred and strained. Boss threshold exceeded. Dragon level increased to 11. Sovereign composite ink consumed. Writing hand function critical. Lyra rose on the rebuilt wing, and the arena stopped long enough to watch the same tiny mud-scale dragon tower over the field. The forced dragon turned its false cores toward her, and one bright core appeared in its chest. It wanted us to strike there. The bright chest core was a lie. Script site marked it because the program wanted to be seen. Lyra climbed on the rebuilt wing and drove through the forced dragon's guard, and inkfire opened the chest plates. Her claws struck the glowing core, but the light vanished before contact. A new core flashed inside the right wing root. The forced dragon hit Lyra across the jaw and threw her through an empty lower barrier. The first finishing attempt had failed, and the control point could move. My writing hand hung useless at my side. Derek reached the broken center line. That transfer isn't part of my dragon. Multi-line scan followed the red-silver writing instead of the false cores. The script crossed the chest, paused at the throat, and split toward both wings. Every threat pushed it through the same junctions. It was fast. It wasn't creative. What does your dragon protect by instinct? The left lung. Give him a reason to turn toward it. Derek stepped into the open with both hands raised, and the forced dragon dove at him. One natural eye opened beneath the black plates, and its head shifted left by a fraction. The program moved the core away from the protected lung. Lyra missed the chest. She fired inkfire beside the visible core, and the black gold flame peeled control writing away from the armor. Red-silver lines appeared across the neck, and the core transferred again. This time script site followed the writing carrying it. Lyra attacked the throat, and the program moved to the wing. She changed direction before the transfer finished, and the rebuilt wing folded through the turn without twisting. Her tail struck the false core and forced it toward the last junction at the neck. A metal control clasp pushed through the scales. Varek had hidden a physical anchor beneath the magic. The forced dragon gathered enough power to flatten the arena, but Derek shouted one command. Thagon. The dragon's real eye opened, and its head dropped 1 inch. Lyra used that inch. She hit the forced body chest to chest and drove it through the center platform, and her rebuilt wing locked over the black-edged shoulder. The dragon fought the program and held its neck still. I ran across Lyra's wing, while linked brace carried her balance through my legs and hooked my good arm through the exposed control lines. The clasp burned through my sleeve, and Varek shouted from the sealed booth. Don't touch that. Lyra pulled backward, and I pulled with her. The clasp tore free. Red-silver light exploded across the field, and every false core went dark. The black plates stopped growing, and Darek's contract mark reignited. Stop, he said. His dragon stopped. The forced body collapsed until bronze scales and ivory wings returned, and it lay breathing beneath Lyra's rebuilt wing. Derek touched its face and looked at me. We yield. Korra's crystal carried the concession across the arena. Final opponent conceded. Forbidden control state broken. Centennial final complete. Korra stepped onto the ruined platform. By combat result and confirmed concession, Rowan and Lyra are the Centennial Dragon champions. The foreign delegations rose first. The workers followed. Then the whole arena stood. Lyra opened both wings above them. One was scarred. One was written in black and gold. Both belonged to the same dragon they had laughed at 4 days earlier. Guards dragged Vyrak from the control booth with his seal locked inside an evidence case, and Korra froze every seizure order bearing his authority. Derek gave the foreign captains his testimony beside his recovering dragon, and the fight had created evidence nobody could bury. The champion board asked for my first commands, and I secured Mira's deed and income under international witness. Then I called Toma, Keld, and Bram onto the ruined platform. Toma received the quartermaster seal for a new dragon workshop open to workers and common handlers, and Keld received its independent forge contract. Bram received authority to restore and promote every crew punished for helping us. The worker section erupted when compensation, housing credit, and paid contracts appeared beside their names. The king and Leon stood below Mira's protected platform while their declaration remained on the board. That was the humiliation I chose. They had to stand beneath the truth they spent years hiding. Korra added one final line to the record. Lyra was my chosen partner and couldn't be classified as crown property. I accepted the title of Royal Dragoon Commander only after that. I didn't take the throne. I took enough authority to make it answer for what it did. Mother came down after the crowd thinned and touched the uninjured side of Lyra's face. Can we go home now? I looked at the independent residence seal in her hand. We have one. Lyra shifted into her upright body and folded the rebuilt wing behind her. The quill opened one last time. Unknown divine tool link detected. Source beyond all registered kingdoms. Syra checked the line beside me and stopped smiling. Lyra looked at my face. Another impossible quest? After Mother eats. This time, nobody was throwing us out. We were choosing where to go next. 4 days ago, that phrase meant exile, but now the same record had become Mira's protection.